Now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You're welcome along to Thursday's OTB AM. It's Eoin and Shane with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And we've got a packed show for you between now and then. We've got Damien Delaney chatting football first up at around 8:15. Then we've got Marc Ó Sé coming on to tell us how to stop David Clifford. We're going to be chatting Serena Williams and a crazy couple of days at the French Open. And Johnny Ward will be in situ then later on to look ahead to Dundalk and their huge European night, hopefully in store for them later on today. Throughout the morning as well, of course, we are going to be paying tribute to Diarmuid Connolly. The Dublin legend announced his inter-county retirement last night, and we'd love to hear from you, whether you're a Dublin fan or not so much of a Dublin fan. We'd love to hear your memories of seeing Diarmuid Connolly play. You can tweet us at Off The Ball, and we'll get to all your texts and messages throughout this morning's show. Before all that, here is David Meyler. He was on last night's show talking Ireland-Slovakia, Keane and Doherty Colm.
Very happy to say, as ever, David Meyler's with us. Good evening.
Joe, how are you?
I'm very well. I mean, I hope you're doing okay, my man. I was thinking of you.
Oh, yeah?
Well, you know, I can't think of two people you love more than Jurgen Klopp and Roy Keane. Cork's beloved, Liverpool's saviour, fighting on national television. I mean, it was like watching your parents breaking up. Who would David pick to go and live with, Roy or Jurgen? Tough time for you.
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to go with Roy, wouldn't I? Fellow Cork man. I'd have to pick Roy over Jurgen.
So, look, there's lots going on, and it feels like we've been talking about this Slovakia-Ireland game for a long time, and suddenly it's here. Stephen Kenny has named his squad. So 8th of October in Bratislava. Winners go on to face either Bosnia-Herzegovina or Northern Ireland, as we know. That will be on the 12th of November. How were you in the build-up to these big do-or-die games? Did you relish them? Were you nervous? Were you, thinking about it non-stop? What was your approach?
I think at the start, you're not really thinking about it. You're more focused on your own club and that you're, playing regularly. Because if you're not playing, you're kind of going into, an international camp thinking, the manager's probably not going to pick me. So in the weeks leading up to it, you're probably more focused on your club. But it's kind of, after this weekend is gone, and then the lads set their sights on travelling over to Ireland to meet up with the team, meet up with the manager, then it starts kind of sinking in. It's always in the back of your mind, but these are the moments you live for. These types of games where it's kind of like you said, do or die. I was fortunate enough to play in a few of them big games. Even the Wales one is the one I kind of draw on all the time. That was a surreal moment for me, and it's one I look back on with fond memories. And people still come up to me and talk about my performance that night, and to be a part of something, it was special. And obviously for me, being captain was immense, for my family, myself. So I think the boys have to look forward to these games because they're the moments that you remember.
Well, it's still the last time we've beaten opposition of note away from home, really, October 2017.
I know, it is hard to believe. If you look at, we played Denmark and all that, they were tough games. We've had some hard games, but it's not a great record to have. But at the same time, I still feel we are capable of going away and getting a result, whoever we may face. Of course, look, if you play your Frances, your Germanys, your Hollands, Englands, they're very good teams. But I wouldn't fear Slovakia as I would those. And I think, we can get at them. We can create chances. We can score goals. We just need someone to, take on the mantle that, wants to score the important goals like Robbie Keane did for so many years.
For one thing, they won't have to deal with the atmosphere, which is, it's got to be a major advantage. I can still remember the atmosphere vividly through the television that night, and the Welsh anthem was sang a cappella, and it felt like the place was shaking. So they don't have to deal with any of that. What's your memory of that atmosphere? Did it help you, or was it actually something to really try and overcome?
Well, word had got round that they were going to do it. Now, when I signed with Reading, I remember asking Chris Gunther about it, and he said, no, it was done. It was a mistake. But we had heard 2-3 days previous, Martin had pulled me and said, he had heard that this was going to happen and all that. It actually spurred me on. I actually like when they sang the national anthem, it was amazing. There's no doubting that. It was incredible. You know, Cardiff was a tiny little stadium, so like everybody proudly sang the Welsh national anthem. But I think it kind of made us focus and switch on more. And I remember when we were in the huddle and I gave a talk, like I was shaking and fellas were looking at me and they could see it. Like it was, the emotion was coming out of me into them. Like I never for one moment in that game felt that we would lose, even when we scored. I trusted the lads, you know, the back four, everyone so much that like I knew we would get the result.
My other memory that night is you and James McLean combining to take poor Joe Allen out of the game.
Well, do you know what? Joe actually came up to me after the game and he wasn't happy. Of course they had lost, but you know, he'd gone off. I think it was with a concussion. But if you look back at it, I think James pushes him and I jump. And like I think his head hits my like hip bone or something, and then McLean clatters him as well. But that kind of, I think for us, it's like in big games like that, it's like, you know, the first moment, the first tackle, the first header, you know, the first shot on target, the first corner, you know, those kind of things. And it was a big tackle. I remember, I think Joe Allen had caught me a couple of minutes before in a tackle, and I was going to say, right, I'll get him back. Albeit I didn't like really mean to tackle him there. I was kind of like a clumsy kind of coming together, but it was kind of, we set our marker out that we weren't going to be pushed over, that like we were there to fight. And you know, you often see any of these, you know, pundits talking, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to roll your sleeves up and you've got to, you know, fight. You know, you like, there's a famous quote I heard of somebody years ago, was like, professional sport is the only job where somebody is physically trying to stop you doing your job. Like if you look at any other job, and we were there to stop them and they were there to stop us, and we let them know that we weren't going to be pushed over. And like I said, I always felt we were going to get a result.
And as much as Ireland are now trying to play football under Stephen Kenny, that attitude, that physicality, to be frank, is always, especially in those bigger games, especially against good opposition, it's going to be something that we're going to have in our armoury.
Of course. Like, it's not, the problem I have is I think people have this, you know, perception that we're going to just all of a sudden just play like Barcelona, not like to the level they did, like, but you know, just keep playing and playing. But there's going to be times when you're not going to be able to dominate the ball from start to finish for a complete and entire 90 minutes. We're going to have to, you know, at times drop back, you know, set up if Stephen plays the 4-3-3, then set up, you know, a back four, a solid five in midfield, and get the striker to come back. We're going to have to, you know, there's going to be times when teams are going to get on the ball and they're going to make it difficult for us. That's just part and parcel of it. There's going to be stages when I think the big thing that needs to be more encouraged, which I think, you know, Stephen is doing, that, you know, we probably, certainly in my era when we played, that we probably should have been better at, when we turned over possession, to then keep hold of it. We were always looking to straight away counterattack constantly, that we never actually retained possession for, you know, even if you talk about 10 to 15 passes that the opposition then dropped back off you, we were turning over possession far too easily. And I think Stephen is now trying to change that, that he's trying to get them to, you know, control the ball, you know, on turnovers.
It seems like Slovakia can certainly hold on to the ball as well. If there is a worrying combination from the Bulgaria-Finland game, it is, you know, certainly as much as Ireland are now intent on trying to play football, it's not like it all suddenly worked, you know, and how can it overnight? How can we suddenly become fluid and create loads of chances? So that didn't happen. And yet we certainly conceded a really poor quality of goal. So those two things together, that's not a good combination, obviously, for a match like this. Talk to us about both, what we did on the ball and then the weird, you know, because we traditionally been pretty good defensively, the weird lapses in concentration for the goals we conceded.
Well, first thing you have to look at, you know, the situation that the whole world is in with COVID, right? That, you know, the leagues are cut short and whatever, and then there's, you know, we restart and then there's a break. Like, so lads hadn't been playing regular football, you know, and that's it. It was a pre-season for them, in the sense that they weren't up to speed. Like, I even saw Stephen Kenny's press conference the other day. I couldn't believe it when he mentioned Shane Duffy had only played one league game, you know, with Brighton. To think like how long, and then he comes in and he's captain in both games. So there's going to be a lot of rustiness. Now, we've just touched on what Stephen's trying to get to do with the lads playing football. Like, whenever the games were on, they'd have made up on the Sunday night. Stephen has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to work on everything with them. And I think it is very difficult to get so many messages across. Now, I've spoken to a few lads, like they've said different things or whatever, like they've all been really positive, but there's only so much he can get across to them in that time, that when they step out on the pitch that they can remember it all. Because a lot of it comes from, it's the players' confidence, the players have got to go out and have confidence to get on the ball and, play it. A lot, like, I spoke to, Conor Hurlin quite a bit after the game because he asked me how he thought he did and whatever. And I said, like, at times, we're just playing the ball. It's almost for the sake of playing the ball. There's no, like, purpose to, if we're going to go forward, then we go forward with purpose. Like, they're knocking balls around midfield, they're knocking around the back. But if you watch any of the top teams, I think, like, for me, the best team in England is Liverpool. But if you watch them, like Mikel Arteta spoke, but they're knocking the ball around the back, and then Van Dijk hits a 70-yard diag onto Mo Salah's, toe. So it's very hard for, Arsenal to press them, because if they go long, Liverpool go long, then they're in. Like, at the moment, we're in a adapting phase that we're trying to find the balance of it. So I do think those Bulgaria-Finland games will have been huge for the sake of the players coming in, getting to know Stephen, working with Stephen for that, week to 10 days, that I think by the time the Slovakia games, when he's had another full week of training, I think the lads will be really geared up and clued up to what he's after and what's required of them to play in the games. So I'm really optimistic and really positive about the Slovakia game, because I think, like I said, I believe we can get a result, but also the fact that Stephen has had that last camp to work with them now coming forward, that they know where, they know what Stephen's after, because it's a lot different at club level when Stephen, like, could have worked with players, for a full pre-season, which is usually 6-7 weeks. But now that he kind of gets into a camp and it's a quick turnaround before the games are there,
That's really fascinating, because look, you can't be at your free-flowing best as a team if you're all trying to digest a lot of information on the pitch in real time. Yeah,
of course. It's normal, Some of the best the best advice I received was, like, a manager, Steve Bruce, came to me one day on my debut, just pulled my jersey and said, just pass the ball to someone wearing that jersey. That's all you need to do. And at times we can overcomplicate it. Like that is the beauty of football. I'm not saying that Stephen is overcomplicated or he's giving them too much information, but we are changing a lot from what we were used to. Because we were solid, we were compact, we were hard to beat. You always felt that McLean would probably pop up with a goal. When Wes played, you could give the ball to Wes anywhere, he'd deal with it. Do you know what I mean? We probably found our niche in the way to play and to get results. Yeah. I'm not saying it was super negative. We were always encouraged to take the ball. It's not as if, never once did I hear Martin say, like, shell it up the pitch, or, he used to roar and scream daily, like, I was certainly one of them, like, get on the ball and make something happen, like, you have, look, opinions are one thing, right? But you have, like, Roy, who worked with him, best midfielder in the Premier League history. Like, he never once, like, said, like, shell the ball. If you watched some of the games where he was involved on the sideline, he's screaming at midfielders to get on the ball. He's saying, keep the ball, work it, and whatever. So it's going to take time, but it's good. Like, our conversation would be totally different if we'd beaten Bulgaria and Finland comfortably, playing fantastic football. But there were positive signs, and I do think having that camp, coming into the next camp, I think the lads would be proper geared up. And so Stephen Kenny's trying to give them, I presume, some kind of framework for how they're to move around the pitch and how they're to move the ball. Do you suspect it's dramatically different to the point where players are thinking, oh, should I be making a forward run here, or am I meant to stop, or what am I meant to be doing here? Like, can it get to that kind of an extent? I wouldn't say to the extent you said. I think the problem you have is that when you're working through phases of play and you're talking about, like, when the right back receives the ball, the midfielder, peels out, or which position they go. But you've got to remember, some of this stuff at times in training will be unfazed. So there's nobody pressing you or closing you down. Or even if you are doing it with, opponents trying to close you down, then, like, it's only lighthearted because it's training. When it's in a game, the opposition are really trying to stop you. And then it almost, like players can almost, what's the best way to probably phrase it? They kind of have a, a brain freeze where they think, oh, well, the manager's encouraging me to make this run over here, but the opposition is stopping me. What am I going to do now? It can be almost become static, that you're trying to do what you've been told so much that a lot of football has to come, like the best players in the world are creative. They think on their feet and they think on the spot. You can't, like, even you see like Ronald Koeman talking about Lionel Messi, you don't coach him. You can't coach him, like, because he knows what to do. It's a feel in the moment. It's just like, we have to just find the balance.
And I don't know if you noticed in the Bulgaria game, I mentioned this to Dan last night, it was part of a similar-ish conversation, so I don't want to go overboard on this, but it was just a small example which maybe exemplifies what you're talking about. In the Bulgaria game, first minute, Shane Duffy brought the ball into midfield, lost it quite badly, and then he tried something later on similar, lost the ball again, but there were a couple of moments where Duffy was in possession and Bulgaria had fallen back a bit. And James McCarthy was physically, hands out, letting everybody know, you're meant to come into midfield with the ball, draw a man. And there were times where he was like throwing his arm, waving him forward when he had the ball, and Duffy didn't do it, and then remonstrations between the two. And I thought, well, that is interesting. Certainly, McCarthy's of the opinion that Duffy should be taking that ball into midfield, and I couldn't work out, has Duffy lost his nerve a little bit, feeling a bit rusty, or he doesn't agree with McCarthy that is what I should be doing on the ball? And it was just, these are the little dynamics that suddenly spring up, and I suspect Stephen Kenny and the team will be talking about. I don't know, did you even notice that going on?
No, I didn't notice it. Of course, when you look, if a centre-half has the ball in their space in front of him, you're always told to drive into the space.
Yeah.
It's obviously, like, whether or not Stephen is told Sheahan to do that, it's something Sheahan should do regardless. But as you said, the thing is, like, with Sheahan coming forward, losing the ball, then Sheahan coming forward, losing it again, you start to think, I don't really want to be going in there. I don't want to be losing the ball time after time, because he's, centre back with Eoin. If he loses the ball, they're in on goal. So that might have been for him on that occasion. It's just probably a confidence thing. Yeah. Like I said, Stephen had said he's not played much football. He's now gone to Celtic. God, I don't know, but I think he's top scorer with all the headers he's scoring. But those games will help him. And
someone made the point, with Celtic, he has quite a lot of possession, and those demands will be on him to take the ball out at times, I'm sure. That was interesting, so Conor Harron might give you a buzz or check in and ask for advice. Is that something he regularly does?
Well, no, it's more of a catch-up. I've known Conor a long time, and we get on really well. And obviously we both played in midfield. Well, I played, he plays. But it's someone, like, I'm close with him. I get on really well. I'm happy to see him playing, doing well, obviously, with Villa. I know now they've signed Ross Barkley, so it'll be a bit of competition for him. But at the same time, I want to see him doing well. And, we catch up on the phone. So we're due to play golf now soon. So.
Did you call anyone in your playing career and ask them to give an outside view on how you were doing?
Well, first and foremost, as you well know, I have my father. He didn't miss many games, so he was quick to tell me what he thought.
He called you. You didn't call him.
No, look. There was times. There was times when, Roy was obviously working with Martin. Obviously, I was playing with Hull. Roy was living in Manchester, so they used to go around to see games. Roy used to come to games. Obviously, when Roy was there, word would filter down to me, Roy is here and whatever. And I used to, ring him or text him after the game, because I knew, like, if he'd been over, he'd be driving home to Manchester. So I'd be curious to know his thoughts. He was great. He'd sit you down, he'd talk you through from start to finish, what he thought you did well, what you think you can improve on, what you didn't do well. Gave me great feedback. Was very, very honest, as you can imagine.
And can I stop you there? Because he is criticised as a pundit for maybe lacking specifics or not breaking down the game the way Gary Neville or Jamie Carragher does, with the screen and pointing out various tactical things. So when he's giving you advice, is it specific and insightful, or is, because on TV he can have the reputation for being a bit too much focused on things like attitude and put in a tackle man and that kind of stuff. Was he giving you good tactical stuff?
Oh yeah, he'd run through everything with me. He'd be very specific to me.
Right.
He would go through things with me as a midfielder.
Any examples you can think of things he used to pick you up on?
It might be something of, do you remember when you conceded that chance, blah, 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 and then you'd be kind of going, you'd be trying to rack your brain because you've just played a game and going through, your emotions are high and whatever. And I'd be going, yeah. And he'd say, like, you should be 5 yards across doing that because you can cut that passing lane. At times, you're charging out to, block the man, whereas, like, where's the danger? And I'm like, well, the danger is the goal or the ball in behind me. And he's like, well, hold your ground.
Okay.
Like, the ball in front of you with the man is better than the man with the ball behind you. He said, you don't want to be chasing back. Little things like that. Like, there was, look.
But sorry, the little things is the real understanding and the genius of the game. I almost think the little things is more impressive than someone able to say the bigger things.
Yeah, of course. But look, there was many occasions with Ireland when I had, chats with them about games. It's just probably, like you said, I'll stop you there because a lot of people don't speak out and say about this, that, and the other. They don't talk about these things because it might be only small snippets of information, but you start to think about them, and it's his understanding of the game that he's trying to, pass on a message for you to play better or improve your performance. And like certain things, like that was the big one for me, was like, if the man is in front of me and he has the ball, I don't necessarily need to go and close him down because I'm the nearest man. Like, the ball in front of me is better. If I can make him play it sidewards, great. If I can make him play backwards, fantastic. But I don't need to steam out of, like, my position and get the ball pop around me, which in my early days of my career, I probably did a little bit too much. That as I got older, I started to understand the game, understand the position a lot better.
It's kind of a cool thing, isn't it, for the boy from Cork to be able to pick Roy Keane's brain after a match, I guess he would have, respected you doing that as well and liked the fact that you were doing that as well. So I'd say they're enjoyable conversations to have. Well,
they were very enjoyable unless I had a bad performance. I can bring up one occasion. I can't remember what had happened. Well, I was coming to the end of my contract at Hull or something like that. And he actually drove over from Manchester for a game. So he was sitting in the car park, waiting, obviously, because obviously he doesn't want to go in and people would be bothering me, kind of want to slip in right on kickoff, I imagine. But I walked past this car and he beeped the horn. And I looked at him and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm not involved." And he went, "I'm fucking driven all this way over to see you, to see you playing. You're not even playing." And I was like, "Yeah, well,
sorry."
Yeah, I was like, yeah, probably the wrong fella. But at the same time, look, these things happen.
Sure. So with your right back hat on, and as somebody who kind of adjusted to playing right back, I just want to play a clip here. It's Matt Doherty, because obviously Spurs have, God, I don't know how many games coming up. So they're playing last night. They have Maccabi Haifa coming tomorrow. By the way, we should talk about burnout at some stage because the schedule is just nuts for so many of these players. But Spurs play tomorrow. Matt Doherty was doing the press conference today. He was fantastic all the way through. Really, absolutely one of the better speakers and full of insights. But he talks later on about adjusting to right back in a back four, which I want to get your thoughts on. But first of all, asked about the battle with Seamus Coleman for the Irish number 2 jersey.
Look, I played the last few games. It's always going to be a constant battle between me and Seamus. And that's fine. Whoever plays, we have the full support of each other. We'd obviously both like to play. And we feel like we can play in some way together. But that's not really up to us. That's up to the manager. But I don't think being at a bigger club than Wolves will necessarily guarantee me to play. He's the captain at the end of the day. And we all know the credentials that he has, and we know how good he's been and consistent he's been in the Premier League and for Ireland over the last probably 8-9 years. So look, it's probably a 50-50 with who plays. I know he's in pretty good form at the moment, so I might have to up my game over the next couple of days.
I was just wondering, there's been a bit of switching between the different systems, 3 at the back, 4 at the back. You obviously played last season mainly as a wing back. How different are those two positions to play, right back or right wing back?
Oh yeah, very different. And people might not think they're that much different, but they are. Just positionally, I think I realised once I went into a back 4 consistently since the start of the season that you just don't actually have to do as much defending as a wing back. So look, it's for me going into a back 4 is definitely tougher. It's something I have to which I am actually I'm getting used to and improving with each game. So the differences are there mostly defensively. I'm still able to get in back posts and stuff. I'm still able to go forward. But it's just harder work because you're coming from deeper, and you're not necessarily up the pitch all the time. Defensively though, it's just a lot about your position. I think when you play wing backs for so long, you kind of pick up a few bad habits, and you probably don't get in as tight to your centre back as much as you should, and your body positions, etc. So, look, I'm still learning. I'm still able to improve playing in the back four. So, it's something that I'm actually excited about doing in terms of. I know that I can play wing back, but just being able to kind of get myself back into this type of shape. And trying to like excel in that shape also. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to be playing back four.
Yeah, Matt Doherty there. It's Joe Malloy here with David Meyler. First off, how well does he come across? Not dissimilar to yourself actually in press conferences, just honest and interesting.
Yeah, I think at certain times there's a few lads are kind of probably a bit too media trained in the way they speak. It's better to nearly be natural and more honest, and I think more people will appeal to you if you do say it as you see it. It's like, look, you mightn't agree with everything I say, but if I'm honest, you have to respect that. And I think Matt is honest there. It is probably the toughest call that Stephen has, is the two of them. Like, both great lads, both great players. They get on really well. It's just, it's so tough. It's almost like we're desperate for Stephen to probably play wing back so that he could play Enda and, Matt, and then he can play, Seamus in the back three, because at the moment they're probably two. I know Callum had a great performance against Chelsea, but like they're probably two of the most informed players in the Irish team,
I sometimes look at Matt Doherty and the way he'll come inside, he's brilliant to come inside. Sometimes looking at him lately, given the Colm situation, and I'm thinking, okay, if McCarthy's probably in there and Hendrick's kind of in there, this guy really likes coming inside. Could he, with a few training sessions under his belt, do a job in there and grow into that role, or is it just too much of an ask, I wonder?
It's a big ask.
Is it?
Because the thing I'll say to you, Joe, if you look at it like this, when you play right back, for the games I played right back, you receive the ball, and in your peripheral vision, you can see the left winger closing you down, but you know that there's nobody behind you here. There's nobody, like, your fella here is your, centre-half partner who more than likely is pass you the ball. When you're in the middle, anyone can come from anywhere to receive the ball. It's not a case of you can just slot into, midfield. Yes, of course, look, somebody would be quick to say to me, oh, look at Philip Lamb, but you're talking about an exceptionally gifted footballer who's, like, by all accounts, if you listen to Pep Guardiola speak about him, he's the most intelligent footballer he's ever worked with. That he could understand it. But receiving the ball constantly in different angles, rather than the ball comes out to you and you've got the whole pitch in front of you and you can see the entire picture, it's a lot different.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
Any area you name it, I've had instances of racism thrown at me, and other people I know and family members, etc. So,
I didn't know. What's an example of that, Simon?
My father being abused at petrol stations while I'm in the cars as a kid, on the hurling GA pitches, every second game, every third game.
A shout from the sideline or from fellow players?
Players, sidelines, you name it.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
The all-new OTB Sports app. It's all videos, sports news, live scores, interviews, podcasts, all waiting for you. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
It is 7:59. You're welcome back to Thursday's OTB AM. Eoin and Shane with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. If you've just joined us, you have missed David Meyler in conversation with Joe on last night's football show. That full piece available now on the OTB Sports app or on youtube.com/off the ball. Over the next couple of hours, we're going to be chatting to Damien Delaney about football. We've got Marc Ó Sé chatting about the art of defending, particularly in the context of stopping David Clifford. We're going to be chatting about Serena Williams later, and we've also got Johnny Ward on to look ahead to a massive night of European action for Dundalk. Throughout the morning as well, obviously, we're going to be paying tribute to Diarmuid Connolly, and Paul Curran will be among the voices that we're going to have on here in OTB AM in a little while. If you're just waking up and you've missed the news, Diarmuid Connolly has announced that he is retiring from inter-county football. And we would, of course, love to hear your Diarmuid Connolly memories. If you're a Dublin fan, if you're not a Dublin fan, we're interested in both. You can tweet us at Off The Ball or leave a comment on the stream below. Shane Hannon, as a Monaghan man, you surely have a story of Diarmuid Connolly-induced pain.
There's more than one. I think, for most counties. And I'm sure it's the same for yourselves down in the Kingdom. But there's different moments. Monaghan, of course, have had a reasonable record against Dublin in recent years. If you talk about league games, you've had big wins in Clonus, big wins in Croke Park. You've had a couple of draws against them as well. So, like, no big championship wins, but still stuff that we can hold on to and remember for the rest of our lives as Monaghan fans. But there were a couple of moments where Diarmuid Connolly just ripped us apart. There was one game, I think. It was a 2016. Maybe Conor McManus scored 12 points, but we ended up on the wrong side of a 1-point defeat. Diarmuid Connolly scored a goal in that game. There were games in Clonus. I think one game in Clonus where the biggest cheer of the day was Monaghan were 3 points ahead in the league, and Diarmuid Connolly received a black card, a well-deserved black card, it had to be said. But that was the biggest cheer of the day, which kind of gave you an indication as to the strength and depth that he possessed as well, and the importance he held for that Dublin team. But what an extraordinary talent. He's hurt Monaghan, he's hurt Kerry, he's hurt Mayo, he's hurt Tyrone, and there aren't many major counties, and I'm including Monaghan as a major county there as a little bit of cheekiness, but what a player, and he'll be sorely missed by all fans of Gaelic football.
For sure. His statement last night, he says, I've come to the decision to retire from representing Dublin GA at inter-county level. He mentions how fortunate enough he was to play with an incredible group of players. I've cherished memories for life, he said. I was lucky to have shared it with an exceptional collection of friends who displayed unwavering support and loyalty to me during my time. He thanks his club, he thanks the county board and all the Dublin senior management and his family. Finally, he says, I would like to express my eternal appreciation to the incredibly loyal, passionate and devoted Dublin supporters who were always there for us, no matter the score. You will always hold a special place in my heart. And I think that is one of the things that everybody, no matter what side of the fence you're on in terms of being a Dublin supporter or not, that we will all appreciate is the psychological boost of Diarmuid Connolly merely existing on the pitch, whether or not that is as a substitute, whether or not that's as a starter. Because as a substitute, as you say, like if the biggest roar on that afternoon in Clonus was the black card for Diarmuid Connolly, the biggest roar on an afternoon in Croke Park, if Diarmuid Connolly's not starting, is when he comes onto the pitch. And just this wave of noise that emanates from the hill, it has to have had a psychological impact on the opponents. What I find interesting about Diarmuid Connolly is how I think we've gone on a journey with our opinions of Diarmuid Connolly over the last 10 years or thereabouts. And granted, I'm definitely putting this in a Kerry context over the last 10 years, that you can go back to 2013, the greatest game of football ever played, in my opinion, probably when Gaelic football peaked. And on that very day, Diarmuid Connolly is the best player on the pitch. He's awarded the Man of the Match award by Peter Keane on that afternoon. He stands out in the midst of the greatest game ever played. But yet the tone towards Diarmuid Connolly, the attitude towards Diarmuid Connolly on that afternoon from Kerry fans is one of disdain. It's one of, we really don't like this guy. Whereas 6 years later, 2019, All-Ireland final, I definitely feel that feeling had dissipated entirely, because there was a year when he wasn't around, because we knew that this team was as efficient without him, but not as enjoyable to watch without Diarmuid Connolly. Because that year happened where he wasn't around, we definitely felt a deeper appreciation for Diarmuid Connolly. And when he is playing that unbelievable top-of-the-laces ball into Kieran in the 45th minute of last year's drawn All-Ireland final, there was just a sense of everybody's applauding for this guy. Everybody can bow down and appreciate just how brilliant he is. And I guess maybe I'm putting that a little bit strongly. I don't think anybody on that afternoon from a Kerry perspective is actually saying, oh, fair play to the Dubs here or anything like that. But the tone changed from one of disdain towards this player to one of genuine admiration when he finished up. And I'm not sure did many people see this coming. I think it would have been one of the talking points over the next little while. It was one of the talking points we had with Conor McKeown on Monday's show about how is Diarmuid Connolly going? Will he be back? Will he be pushing for a starting place? He definitely got the sense that he was in such great shape last year that under new management he might have even been in a better position to make an impact this year.
Yeah, at 33, I guess we can't be too surprised that he's retiring from intercounty football, but there is a surprise, and everyone, I think, when they saw the news last night was like, "Oh, Jesus, that's a reasonably big surprise for Dublin." And they've lost Jim Gavin, they've lost Jack McCaffrey, they've lost Eoin O'Gara, they've lost Aaron Daly, they've lost a lot of players that have been with them through a lot of these victories in recent years. And look, Diarmuid Connolly's role in all of those. I saw Dublin fans on Twitter last night talking about the 2011 quarterfinal against Tyrone when he was just majestic, and that being a turning point for that Dublin team when they went on to win that All-Ireland that year. You know, the 2017 All-Ireland final against Mayo. I mean, you mentioned the reaction he gets from fans when he comes off the bench. Everyone remembers was it 2017? It was a few years ago, I think, against Tyrone maybe, when Eric Lowndes came on wearing number 12, and everyone in the crowd thought this is Diarmuid Connolly coming on, because Eric Lowndes bore a kind of resemblance to Diarmuid Connolly on the day for some reason. Maybe it was the
league
haircut.
Final, actually.
The league final, sorry. Yeah, and like, biggest cheer of the day for Eric Lowndes. So Eric Lowndes got to feel what it was like to be Diarmuid Connolly, even for just a moment. And then the big screen, of course, cuts to Connolly wearing number 20, and everyone's like, "Oh, calm down, he's not on yet." I think Lowndes did an interview a year or two ago where he spoke about, do you know those mugs you can get where if you heat them up, if you put like boiling water into them, it changes the image on the mug. So I have one that's a black mug that changes to the space. You know, I'm a space geek, so it changes to an image of space once you put hot water into it. But Eric Lowndes was awarded a mug from his teammates that has a picture of Eric Lowndes, and when you put heat into it, it changes to Diarmuid Connolly. So quite an extraordinary present for him to get. I mean, he's one of those players, Eoin, that I liken it to, and again, I bring everything back to snooker, as you know, but Ronnie O'Sullivan took an exile from snooker. He won the World Championship in 2012, did not play snooker for a year, and then came back in 2013. Everyone's thinking, he's going to be crap. He hasn't played for a year. He hasn't practiced. He's been working on a farm for a year, essentially, and done nothing else. And then he comes back and wins the World Championship in 2013 in remarkable fashion. When he came back from Boston in that summer of 2018, everyone's like, he's been gone for a year. What's he going to bring to this Dublin team? And then he pops up against Kerry with that pass that we mentioned. And look, if you're speaking about a pass above the Kieran Kilkenny point that came at the end of it, I think that highlights how integral a person he was to Dublin football.
Yeah, the outside the boot kick pass is close to being renamed to Diarmuid Connolly at this point, considering he's done it on so many occasions. And I guess one of the things that people will talk about as well over the next little while is his contribution to St. Vincent's. I know that's not over yet, so maybe it won't get the same airing over the next couple of days. But I think that's really telling, the way that he was close to his peak in the blue and white of Vincent's as he was for the blue and navy of Dublin, and how much he loves his club. And I guess the testament to him as well is how he does manage to get back into that Dublin side, to possibly the greatest football team of all time after taking a year out. There was definitely a sense when he left that, will Jim Gavin put him back in? Is he a Jim Gavin type player? And those questions were definitely misplaced. I think we've seen it in recent weeks when we've heard Bernard Brogan give us further insight into the Jim Gavin era, where there was no sentimentality. It doesn't matter what your name is, how many All-Ireland medals you have, if you are not putting in the work, not that Brogan ever didn't, but if you're not actually one of the very top performers week in, week out, you are not getting into my starting team. You ain't even getting a substitute jersey. You're not getting any minutes whatsoever. So for Diarmuid Connolly to be thrown back in so early into that All-Ireland final last year as well, I think that's indicative of how admired he was by Jim Gavin and the work that he put in last year. And I think, obviously, when it comes to these mercurial talents, we were like, they're so naturally gifted, and that's it. This guy clearly worked unbelievably hard off the pitch, and all the unseen work as well that he probably deserves credit for too.
You look at what you mentioned there is trust, and managers clearly trusted him to come off the bench, to do a job, to start, to do whatever's asked of him. And he's one of those players that you kind of want to show children, young players in Gaelic football, videos of him playing, just doing the simple things like a kick pass over short distance or long distance, because he's one of those players that, I remember my dad showing me videos of Matt Connor, the awfully great, of Michael Donlan, the Dunmore McHale's and Galway legend, you know, you look at players like Matty Ford, who was so good to watch as well over the years for Wexford. These are players who just excite and get the neutrals off their feet. So even if Diarmuid Connolly is wrecking you, look, I've had days where Diarmuid Connolly is tearing Monaghan defences apart in Clonus and Croke Park and everywhere else, Parnell Park as well. And you can't just, you can only just sit back and admire it. And Stephen Doyle, our own Stephen Doyle, was talking on Twitter last night, and there was a couple of, I think Conor McKeown as well was talking about incidents a few years ago where maybe the 2014 club final against Castlebar, he scored 2-5. There was videos doing the rounds of that performance from him, and people just in the stands and in the press office laughing, just laughing at how good this guy is. And to see an individual talent that makes people laugh is quite rare, quite extraordinary. And I don't know where he ranks in the list of Dublin greats. The fact that he only has 2 All-Stars is surprising to me, and something I only realised last night reading up on him. Thought he would have had a few more, but what an extraordinary player. And Dublin fans will be quite saddened, I think, this morning to see him gone from the inter-county game. But for the rest of us, it's brilliant news.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same without having some Diarmuid Connolly chat on a weekly basis when it comes to the context of Dublin GA, that's for sure. We're going to continue the tributes throughout the morning. As I say, we'd love to hear from you. You can tweet us at Off The Ball, and Paul Curran will be with us in about 15 minutes' time to chat through what he did for the Hill, how much the Dublin supporter loved him, and where he ranks potentially in the pantheon of Dublin greats and the great forwards they've produced down through the years. We're going to be turning our attention to the Premier League very shortly, though, and Damien Delaney will be with us in just a moment. But before that, I want to tell you that OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football. The third episode sees Gary Neville and Teddy Sheringham sit down for an in-depth chat, which will be brought to you on OTB social channels and OTB Sports Radio on Monday, the 5th of October. You can check out cadburyfc.com for updates on promotions and giveaways. Now, coming up this morning, we're going to be joined by Damien Delaney. As I say, in about 5 minutes' time, we're going to get his take on Manchester United last night, how much we can actually learn from that performance, where Manchester City need to improve, a little bit on Jurgen Klopp versus Roy Keane as well, and, of course, Seamus Coleman versus Matt Doherty in the aftermath of those Matt Doherty comments yesterday. We've also sat down with Marc Ó Sé. Unfortunately, the piece was recorded yesterday before the Connolly news, but he will be talking about other great forwards and how to stop them. This is in the context of David Clifford. What is the blueprint for stopping such a dominant forward like that? We're going to be getting Marc Ó Sé's take on that later on. As I say, Paul Curran will be in the mix with us before 9 o'clock, and then after 9, we're going to be chatting about a fairly mad few days at the French Open with Colm Boohig and what has happened to Serena Williams. Later on then, Johnny Ward will be with us, taking us home to 10 o'clock, because, of course, it is a massive night for Dundalk. Can they get through to the Europa League group stages yet again? And we're also going to be doing Deal or No Deal with Johnny a little bit later on. Right, on otbsports.com this morning, just to let you know what is happening. The homepage leads with Simon Zebo talking about his experiences with racism. That full piece as well, we're checking out. A fantastic interview there with Joe last night. John Duggan, meanwhile, is writing about the All or Nothing documentary. It is a portrait of an interesting window into Mourinho. Dundalk boss Gio Bagnoli, meanwhile, says, perform, do well, and the history will come. Meanwhile, Diarmuid Connolly confirms retirement from inter-county football, as we've mentioned. And Meyler's been talking, David Meyler that is, about Roy Keane's coaching. You got his understanding of the game. As I say, if you want to check that out, you can go to the football show section on the OTB Sports podcast tab to listen back to that full thing. And it's as well there on our YouTube channel. So coming up in a little while, we're going to be chatting to Damien Delaney about what's going on in the Premier League. Let's just bring you a flavour of what's actually happening on the back pages, just to take us there. And I guess the Diarmuid Connolly news broke a little bit too late this morning, but we will go through some of the back pages now, and starting with the Irish Examiner. Jose makes Doherty feel special. That is the start of the Irish Examiner. Plenty of other football stories as well, coming from the Ireland camp, but coming from the Dundalk camp as well. Great expectations bring their own pressures for Dundalk is the front of the Irish Times sports section. We will get you the back pages in full from 9 o'clock this morning, but at 8:14 on this Thursday morning, Damien Delaney is with us. How are you getting on, Damien?
How are you keeping?
All well, all well. So last night, we may as well start with Manchester United here. found it interesting that Paul Pogba gets brought on by Solskjaer last night. He clearly thinks that he needs minutes, and I guess this is a weird time for Pogba because compared to any other season, people are talking about him less because everybody's talking about Sancho and everybody's talking about who can Manchester United sign. You do, though, get this feeling, Damien, that this is a huge season for him because compared to this time last year, he now has Van de Beek and Bruno Fernandes beside him. Are we now in a position where the excuses for Pogba's form are now out the window?
Yeah, I completely agree with that statement. Maybe he had his injury problems last year. I felt that he was kind of the player that everyone was picking on at Man United. A lot of people were saying that he was the reason with his hairstyles and his Instagram and all that. But it's time to put up or... I won't say put up or shut up, but it's time for him to kind of nail his kind of trademark style on Manchester United and take that team almost by the scruff of the neck and drag it where it needs to be. Look, he's a top player. He really is. We've seen it with Juventus and we've seen it with France. He just hasn't been able to replicate that form of Manchester United, and there probably is still a little bit, maybe not anymore, but there was talk of him leaving Manchester United. But it looks like as if he's going to stay now, so he just needs to almost accept that and get on with it. Sometimes you think when a player of those sort of talents comes into the Premier League or comes back to the Premier League, in Pogba's case, they may struggle. But you look over at Everton at the moment and you look at the signing of James Rodriguez. By that metric, James Rodriguez should flop. But the reason why he's been so good is probably because of the signings of Alan and Doucouré. And is it as simple as that, Damien, that Pogba has been a little bit let down by those beside him in that Manchester United midfield? Look, I don't subscribe to that notion at all. I think Pogba's first year, he was unbelievable. He got in the PFA Team of the Year. It just seems to be that there was a narrative painted about him that he was this bad boy, and as I said, he almost became like the whipping boy for just pundits and things because of his lifestyle and his cars and whatever else that he did, and it just seemed to gather momentum. And I remember saying at the time when he got picked in the PFA Team of the Year. That is something that is voted for by the players that play against him. And I played against him, and I thought he was absolutely phenomenal in the game we played against. He's a colossal man. He's about 6'5", 6'6", and he's just an absolute athlete. Now, last year he was pretty poor, which you could blame on injuries, or maybe he kind of hadn't looked like he kind of had enough of kind of playing in a poor Man United team. But Van de Beek looked pretty decent last night from the highlights that I saw. So hopefully, if with a few better pieces around him, it might reinvigorate Pogba and kind of get him back involved and rediscover his love of Manchester United.
Damien, can I just ask you about the United defence then? I mean, we speak about players who, the likes of Eric Bailly, for example, last night he put in a very solid display. I think most United fans would agree. You have players like Marcus Rocco, who Solskjaer has spoken about in recent weeks, said, I think he's training a couple of times a day and really trying to push to get back into that United defence. Maybe the likes of Phil Jones and Chris Smalling, their United careers are coming to an end, but over the last few weeks, it's been United need this other central defender, someone to either replace Lindelof, probably Lindelof, given the money they spent on Harry Maguire. But is it imperative that United sign another defender? Upamecano deal didn't happen, but if you see the likes of Eric Bailly performing as he did last night, is that not enough for United fans, or is a bit of transfer activity in the defence realistic and important for United at this stage?
Both of those players you mentioned there are of absolute no use to you because they're always injured. You cannot rely on them. You cannot hang your hat on them for 50 games a season because Eric Bailly spent the vast majority of his Manchester United career injured. So you've never got a chance to see how good he is. And I know a lot of fans will judge a guy off one performance and he might look great, but you got to be judged over 50. And unfortunately, that is the deal when you sign up for a club like Manchester United, or you sign up to play that level. Being fit and being on the pitch is equally as important as just turning in 2 good performances out of 4 appearances a season. It's not enough. So I would cut my losses with those 2, because if he's as injury prone as what he is now, it's not going to improve. He's not going to, Eric Bailly is not going to show up the season and give you 50 games. I would be shocked because he spent the last 2 or 3 years injured. The same with Marcus Rojo. So I think all the talk about Jadon Sancho and all the attacking players they're talking about bringing in, Manchester United will struggle to finish 4th unless they become better defensively as a team. Now, I don't believe that Harry Maguire is is the main man. I know he's captain of Manchester United, but he does need a strong centre-back partner alongside him. And I don't think Victor Lindelof is that. I think they're both kind of good partners for a number one. You think Joe Matip, Joe Gomez alongside Virgil van Dijk. There has to be one constant, one main centre-back. But Manchester United, I think, don't have the money to sign that. You can talk all you want about Sancho, but Man United have a lot of problems at the moment, and I think one of them is the manager. I don't think I've been saying this for a long time. He's been getting away with all sorts. Manchester United still don't have a clear identity as a team. I watch Manchester United play, and it just looks like a collection of players told to go on the pitch and enjoy themselves, and that's how they defend and that's how they attack. It's all off the cuff. You look at most top teams; they're absolutely everything. Nothing is left to chance. Every detail is covered, both attacking and defending. So Manchester United got a whole host of problems for me. And, when you hear people saying that, finishing top four for Manchester United is a success this year, just tells you how far expectations have fallen.
That lack of attacking strategy, was it present there at all when they went through their purple patch at the end of last season?
We see that's what you end up getting when it's off the cuff. It's purple patches, and it's right. Good moments because, if you put players on the pitch and it clicks, the chemistry is good and everybody's enjoying themselves and they're full of energy. There'll become parts of the season, or there will, come times where, players are tired and they need a structure, they need a game plan, they need kind of boundaries to fall back on. And that I always believe that gives players confidence, that you have certain jobs going on the pitch and every player has a certain job to perform. And if every player performs his role, then the whole thing comes together and you get a good team performance. I don't see that attacking-wise or defensive-wise with Manchester United.
Damien, does Ole Gunnar Solskjaer have the aura of a Manchester United manager? I mean, a lot of people I've talked to recently have spoken about the fact that, he sits in the dugout watching the matches on the screen. You rarely see him kind of move towards the technical area, remonstrate with the players. It happens the odd time, but his body language is quite relaxed. Maybe that's just his Scandinavian manner, I don't know. But if you had a manager like that who kind of sits back, maybe he has the likes of Kieran McKenna and Mike Phelan and Michael Carrick to do that kind of verbalising and talking for him. But how's his body language on the sideline for you?
I've been saying this since day dot. He does not have the charisma, personality to manage a club like Manchester United when it's in the situation that it's in. Manchester United, for me, are probably where Liverpool were in about 1994. They were just coming off the back of an awful lot of success and they're sliding into kind of mediocrity for me right now. And it's going to take, they're throwing a huge amount of money at it. And if you look at a lot of players who have left Manchester United and gone on to do pretty good. Think of Lukaku and Ashley Young, Chris Smalling. They've all kind of left. Di Maria going to PSG. So one very interesting thing was that the Sanchez interview that he gave afterwards. After 10 minutes of his first training session, he wanted to leave. So that means there's something fundamentally wrong at Manchester United Football Club because all these players aren't bad players and they all don't go on and have they don't go on and do better away from Manchester United than they were doing at Manchester United. And I think that for Manchester United to arrest this slide, just coming back to your point, it's going to take a manager of huge personality. Now, I know they had Jose Mourinho in and he couldn't do it, but it's going to take a Jurgen Klopp type character, a larger-than-life personality to come in and take control of that football club because I believe that's what needs to happen. There's an awful lot of chefs at Manchester United, an awful lot of people kind of stirring the pot, all want to be the man that's running Manchester United. They want to be part of the biggest club in the world and they want to be the ones to turn it around. But I think it's lacking any real clear direction unless, the owners are happy with the direction it's going in, and that is they're continuing to make money from Manchester United, but the club is continuing to slide into mediocrity.
Gary Neville on Twitter a couple of days ago yesterday said it's appalling that in this market, which is probably the easiest in Premier League history to get transfers done, that United haven't done more yet. They must get Ole a centre-back, left-back and forward pre-deadline. The others are managing to get things over the line. Why not United? So he's obviously pointing the finger at the board here, Damien, and it does seem that Solskjaer at times is insulated from criticism as a result of...
It's unbelievable. The more I see this go on, it's just like they're all tiptoeing around him. And I said this about a year ago. I said, people say that being a nice guy gets you nowhere. It's gotten Ole a year at Manchester United because he seems to be a really likeable fella. And a lot of these players that have played with him have an affinity to him because, he came on and scored last-minute goals. And I'm pretty sure if I played in a team and a manager came on and was scoring all these last-minute goals, you would just have a kind of a feeling for him, a kind of a loyalty to him, a love for him because of what he's done for you. But you know, Gary Neville is quite correct in what he's saying, but first and foremost, the manager's got to take control of the football side of things, and you've got to have a manager strong enough to take control of the board as well. Now, I know that might seem an awful lot difficult, but if you look over at Liverpool, I think Jurgen Klopp is in almost complete control of that football club. I don't believe that the board, the owners, or the director of football, or whoever's there, do anything without picking up the phone and asking Jurgen Klopp first, listen, Jurgen, we're thinking of doing this, and he gets a chance to think about it and says, no, because there's a clear strategy at Liverpool, or there was a clear strategy to get rid of an awful lot of the deadwood that was there and bring in Jurgen Klopp-type players. At Manchester United, it's still 5 or 6 people thinking they're running the show, and I believe the club is getting pulled in 5 or 6 directions. And the reason that I believe that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is in charge is because he accepts an awful lot of it. You know, he doesn't seem like, to go back to your point there, he doesn't seem like a demanding manager, you know, that's really going to fall out with the board or really going to put his job on the line because he's not getting what he wants and say, listen, if you guys don't give me what I want, I'm leaving. He doesn't seem that type of manager. He just seems convenient to have him in that position. And also as a player, you want to have some sort of fear of your manager as well. There has to be a little bit of that. You know, you can't be your best friend all the time. You know, you got to have a little bit like, I'm not playing well today, 20 minutes into the game. You got to be thinking, oh my God, at halftime, I'm getting it. I need to sort myself out here. I need to get myself going. There has to be that element of fear, or that element of like, if you lose a game on a Saturday, that you're going in on a Monday morning and you're actually driving in your car, I won't go as far as say petrified, but you are thinking, oh, for God's sake, we're all getting it here today. There's going to be meetings. He's going to dig people out. I don't really want to be the guy that gets dug out. So there has to be that element of fear as well. I'm not sure that he carries that, to be honest with you.
Right. We want to move on to Manchester City here because there's been a lot of questions asked about them defensively over the last little while. Where is their biggest issue for you, Damien?
It seems to be Pep's identified as defenders. I think Manchester City are obviously a very, very good team, and they just seem to have gotten the centre-back one wrong. And when you're at the very, very, very top, like Manchester City are, and you're down to fine margins, because Liverpool have set a pace in the league that you have to be perfect almost for the whole season. You know, it's 98, 99, 100 points, or even 100 points plus now is what it takes to win the league. And if you're, you know, before you used to be able to carry maybe 1 or 2, or you know, you'd be able to drop in like Alex Ferguson used to do, a few young lads to rest a few players. I think Liverpool are almost sprinting a marathon at this stage, and Man City the previous year as well. So you can't afford to carry anyone, and if there's any weakness in your team, it'll get shown up because you're going to drop a couple of points here or there that you can't absorb and make up further on up the road or later on in the league. And I think Manchester City just haven't quite got the centre-back recruitment right because, you know, in midfield, Fernandinho, I think, is a very, very good number 6. I think he's pushing on a little bit, and that's maybe one slight weakness that they have. Rodri's come in and he's a very, very good footballer, but he's not, you know, a Fabinho type who provides for Liverpool. When Liverpool aren't playing well, Fabinho will make sure they won't lose the game, and they know they're going to get at least 1 goal in the game. And last year you saw in the league, Liverpool won an awful lot of games where you thought maybe they didn't deserve to. And I think it's people like Fabinho and Jordan Henderson get those games over the line. So that's kind of one aspect I'd say. But then again, you look at centre-back, they never really replaced Vincent Kompany, which is obvious enough to say. I think they were expecting more development or more kind of output from John Stones, and hasn't quite come. He's not developed into the kind of John Terry type player they were hoping that he was going to develop into, that, you know, the mainstay of the England team and the mainstay of Manchester City, winning leagues and competing at the top end of European football. Laporte getting injured, I think, was huge for them. I think they were hanging their hat on him being a 50-game a season guy, and maybe Otamendi, Stones and Fernandinho filling in alongside him, so they had a little bit of stability there. Obviously Otamendi's pushed on, he's moved on to Benfica, and they're hoping that this guy is the man now, but it's kind of 400 million on defenders is a lot.
Yeah, like just on Ruben Dias, like I'm not sure have you seen him play, but there's been a few good profiles of him done on The Athletic and Sky Sports over the last couple of days. So these are the attributes we're expecting from Ruben Dias. So he's used to playing with so many risks being taken elsewhere in his team. He's got a good eye for a pass. He's got an intense personality. He's great at team talks. He's going to be the one commanding the defensive line, and his emotional control is top class. So that ticks all the boxes, Damien, I presume, for you.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting words there being used, but I suppose a lot will come down as how much heart and how much spirit that he actually has, because there's come times in the Premier League where all those attributes look great on a bit of paper, but when it comes time to put on your tin hat, has he got that in him to really control the defence and sit in and head balls clear when they're winning 1-0 or they're winning 2-1 with 10 minutes to go, and he, because in the Premier League they'll just throw the kitchen sink at you, most teams. So has he got that attribute? But I suppose you'll only find that out when he's in that situation.
Yeah, we've got a couple of more things to wrap up on. I just wanted to put Monday night to you, and I guess Monday night has been completely overshadowed by the fact that you've got Klopp versus Keane in the aftermath. And it kind of comes back, I guess, to what you've been saying about your manager potentially tearing shreds out of you when things go wrong. I guess the other side of that coin with Jurgen Klopp is that he will go to bat for you no matter what, and this siege-like mentality that he creates. Like, people on the outside may say that's too prickly when he responds to Roy Keane on Monday night, but as players, probably that shows to them how much he'll defend them no matter what.
Precisely. If you're a player and you're sitting in the change room and the TVs are going to be on the change room and then that happens, you as a player are like almost cheering, saying, "Go on, Gaffer." He won't accept any criticism of his team, not when he feels it's unjust and unrewarded. And I suppose he sends out a message to a lot of pundits that this type of, maybe the bullying of Paul Pogba that went on last season. He said, "Don't you guys even think we're starting anything like that with my team?" Because he just jumped on it straight away, and I thought it was brilliant. And if I was a player playing for him, I'd be pretty happy.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about is Crystal Palace's early season form, but in an Irish context. I guess what everybody's thinking to themselves is, how do we get the Crystal Palace version of James McCarthy? How do we get that sort of level out of him in an Ireland jersey, despite the different formation?
I think you're going to get it. I think a lot of criticism has been directed toward James, and it's been unfair because that Ireland game was before the season had even started. So it's almost like a pre-season game, and I'm pretty sure if you went and watched James play against, and I know he picked up a little injury as well in pre-season when he was at Crystal Palace, it was nothing major, but so if he's going in there and he's missed a week's training or 10 days training, and then he wants to go in and play for Ireland, he starts and he doesn't play very well, he gets criticised. But he's had 4 or 5 games now for Crystal Palace. He's going to be fully fit. He's been brilliant this year. I've watched all the Palace games and I thought he's been absolutely fantastic. Him and James McArthur have been the 2 best players for Crystal Palace this year in the middle of the park. And James, he looks fully fit. He looks hungry. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get that version in the Slovakia game.
Damien, it's nice to have options, and Stephen Kenny certainly has options at right back, right wing back, whatever way you want to look at it. But with Seamus Coleman playing the first 3 games for Everton, starting them, playing really well, Matt Doherty, we know, has moved to Spurs and playing well as well. So can these players play together? Stephen Kenny was asked about it this week, and he's obviously speaking about the attributes both bring to the team, and certainly not ruling out the fact that both could possibly play together. Coleman will have been disappointed not to have been involved against Bulgaria and Finland in the Nations League games. So how do they fit into that Irish team together, or can they?
I think I won't say you'd be shoehorning the pair of them in, but he might have to contemplate kind of changing his belief system around and maybe changing his system, and I don't see him doing that. I think he has a system that he played against Bulgaria with 4 kind of 2-3-1 or it'll be a 4 at the back. He won't go to 3-5-2, especially not in a game of that magnitude. So if he does stay with a flat back 4, I think it's just we have to accept that he's going to have to pick one of them. And pick the one that's in form. I said last year when Seamus was starting games under Mick, I said that it was crazy. Doherty was playing the better football, was playing at a better level, was playing in Europe for Wolves, and Seamus didn't have a great season last year by his standards at Everton, yet Seamus played for Ireland, which I thought was a bit, not right, because you play the form players. And at the start of the season, I think Seamus has been fantastic for Everton. So he's the form player. Matt Doherty started pretty slow for Tottenham. So I think you play the form players. And if Seamus is in form, and obviously with Seamus you get the leadership and the I suppose I know he's the captain of the team, but you also get the character of the man, because he's a fantastic leader and he's a fantastic fella. So you just play the form player, and the guy who's not in form just has to sit in the bench and watch. Yeah, it might come down to that, and it'll be as simple as that. Damien Delaney, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million. Thanks, Ads. Thanks.
Damien Delaney there on the line, chatting Premier League, chatting Ireland. Right, we are turning our attention back to the Diarmuid Connolly story. The Dublin legend announced his inter-county retirement last night, and Dublin All-Ireland winner Paul Curran is with us. Good morning, Paul.
Morning. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Was this news a surprise to you?
Yes, a little bit, yeah. I think the timing of it is a little bit strange, you know, with the county, you know, scene set to restart in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, I look. He's 33 years of age. He's a lot of football played with both club and county. Probably feels it's the right time to go. But the timing of it, as I said, is a little bit strange, and it adds to Desi's woes. I think you know, the challenges he has not necessarily have been with, you know, Jim Gavin and Pat Gilroy in their first years. You know, losing a couple of great players himself, and Jack McCaffrey has stepped away earlier, and obviously Paul Clark from the management team. So there's challenges ahead for Desi. So a little bit surprised.
Yeah, because it definitely seemed at the tail end of last year that he could add something to say the very least, and it almost felt that with another full year under his belt, and maybe a little bit of time to himself to actually work on the body or whatever during the pandemic, we might have actually got an even better version of Connolly this year, despite obviously the clock ticking.
Yeah, and absolutely, I agree totally. And the fact that it's a shortened season this year, I mean, they've only gone back to play a couple of league matches, and then it's into knockout football. So, you know, the max games that he can play between now and Christmas is 7. You know, so that would have been, you know, very easily achievable and doable for a fella as good and as fit as Diarmuid.
We obviously can only speculate here, but I wonder, was there a sense that he wasn't going to be in Desi's plans or getting enough game time over the next couple of months?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that's the case, to be honest. I mean, the Desi's plans, I'd say, are kept firmly close to his chest at the moment. I mean, I don't think he'd have allayed that to his players just yet, what he's expecting of them. I think they're only getting back as a group in the last week or so. So, look, this is a decision Diarmuid made himself. He's a guy that makes his own decisions, and I've no doubt that he's thought long and hard about it and felt that this is the right time to go.
We should talk about the incredible inter-county career he did put down then. If you had to pinpoint one moment where he was at his very peak in the blue of Dublin, what would it be?
Well, I think there were so many. I think if you YouTube Diarmuid Connolly's best bits, I think you get about 9 minutes of scintillating action on YouTube. I think everybody should have a look at it, and they should show young boys and girls the ability that this fella had. I mean, he was gifted with athletic ability, number one, and obviously exceptional skills. I mean, he had it all. Could kick left and right from really anywhere in the forward line, which is an incredible achievement. I don't think there's too many players in the history of the game that could do what he did in terms of his scoring ability with both feet from practically anywhere inside the forward line. So there was so many standout moments. I mean, for both club and county. I mean, he dragged Vincent's back to the top of Dublin football as well, and was a very, very committed club man. I mean, he's 2-5 in the All Ireland club final against Castlebar. I think it was 2014, with one goal in particular where he dummy sold it right and popped it into the corner with left. Stands out. But there were so many little moments that turned out to be, you know, big moments in games over the years.
Paul, only 2 All-Stars, you say only, but I mean, for a player of his talent, probably deserved a few more. But where does he rank in the annals of Dublin greats? Because there's been a serious list of players over the years, and the impact Diarmuid Connolly has had, the bounce back in 2018, the impact he had in 2011 as well in that quarter-final against Tyrone, and Dublin, of course, going on to win that All-Ireland. Where is he in this list of Dublin's greatest footballers of all time?
Well, I think you mentioned there the achievements list. You know, I mean, it's a very lengthy list, both club and county. But the column where it says All Stars is a kind of a curious one. I mean, this guy certainly deserved a lot more All Stars, and why he didn't pick them up is for debate. But I mean, he was part of a generation of forwards in the county that we probably never see again. I mean, the two Brogans, Paul Flynn, Kevin Mack was in there, Paul Mannion, Kilkenny. Like the list is kind of endless. Con O'Callaghan coming in. But I think Diarmuid was up there with the very best of them, not just with this generation of Dublin forwards and players, but also any other generation. I think he's one of the greatest forwards that we've seen over the years. And as I said, if you haven't seen the YouTube 9 or 10 minute clip of his skills, I think it's worth tuning in to see it, because some of the stuff that he was capable of doing, there's very few that had the same ability, and so one of the best, if not the best.
Why do you think he didn't pick up more All-Stars, Paul? I mean, is it a certain type of player that gets the nod from the panel? Is it what was it? Was it his disciplinary record? Why didn't he pick up more than 2?
Yeah, I can't put my finger on that. Diarmuid was a kind of a maverick in ways. I mean, he did his own thing. A lot of the time, he turned up to play. There was no bells or whistles with Diarmuid. He didn't do much press stuff over the years. Just let his football ability do the talking. But I can't answer that, to be honest. But it's a curious one. I mean, if he had 5 or 6 All-Stars to his name, I don't think there'd be any argument at all. But to have 2, I think is a curious one, as I said earlier, and one that I can't answer. I don't have any influence on the All-Stars. You'd have to ask the lads in charge of that gig. But certainly 2 is too low for a fella who not only is one of the best Dublin forwards of all time and players, but also one of the best players to have played the game.
That idea of him being a maverick is very interesting, and we were making the point earlier on that in possibly the greatest game of football ever played in the 2013 semi-final with Kerry, Diarmuid Connolly is man of the match. It was that sort of open kamikaze game in which he stood out. Since then, we've obviously had a much more regimented style of Gaelic football coming in, and yet he has come in to make a big impact, as we saw in the drawn game in last year's All-Ireland final, which is almost a more impressive feat in itself.
Yeah, look, he could operate in any system, if you want to call it that, and the GA has kind of moved from a kind of an all-out action game to system-based at times. I mean, we put huge emphasis in kick-outs, we put huge emphasis in defensive play, and don't forget that Diarmuid has come up against mass defences at times. All teams now put huge emphasis on bringing numbers back and blocking up the defence at times. So he would have had to operate in that system, and was still able to produce magic year after year. And he will be missed. There's no doubt about that. I mean, at 33, he's still probably capable of giving something, but unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. And the curtain comes down on a fantastic career.
Paul, could you explain to people who perhaps aren't Dublin fans just how much he is beloved within the Hill?
Well, I mean, he's up there with the greatest that we've had, and forwards. The Hill loves forwards, good forwards, and the likes of, if you go back, the likes of Jimmy Keaveney and Charlie Redmond and Bernard Brogan, Alan Brogan. I mean, he is up there. I mean, the stuff that, as I said, he did on the field over the years endeared him to the Hill. And as I said, I think people actually like a no-nonsense personality as well. I mean, he did exactly what he said on the tin. He togged out. There was no messing. He went about his game, and there was no bells or whistles or frills. It was just full on outstanding stuff, really. I can't describe how good this fellow was. As I said, have a look at the YouTube video on this fellow. it's astonishing 9 or 10 minute clip on a terrific player.
Paul, myself and Eoin were speaking earlier about how this Dublin team has changed. Even within the last 12 months, you've lost Jim Gavin, Eoin O'Gara, Bernard Brogan, Darren Daly, even the likes of Jack McCaffrey as well, and now Diarmuid Connolly. So changing face on this team. How are they set heading into this championship, a strange championship as it is, but with all those names gone and big names gone, a change of manager as well, and the pressure that comes with wanting to continue that run of All-Ireland wins, where are they set, and how do you expect Dublin to progress and achieve more this year?
Yeah, well, I think every year brings its own challenges. This year we've had a change in manager. We've lost one of our greatest managers of all time, and Jim, who believed firmly in reinventing the team, I suppose, from year to year, and bringing in new players and doing different stuff. And players come and go. That's one of the things that happens in sport. But we are still blessed with some incredible talent and good talent coming through as well that has to be nurtured. So I think we're in a good place. I think it's going to be interesting. 2000, I think, or 99 was the last year where we had a straight knockout competition. So, I mean, knockout competition always produces a shock or two down the years, and I would say that this year will be no different. I just hope that Dublin, are able to cope with that and get on and attack the Leinster Championship like they always do, and then onwards. So it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. There's a couple of little niggles that have happened over the last couple of weeks. I mean, it is a very strange year. Losing McCaffrey and obviously now Diarmuid is a big one, and Paul Clark stepping away from the management team who's been there for the last couple of years. So, fellas come and fellas go, and you just have to deal with it. And I'm sure Desi will be able to deal with that. I mean, as I said, there's plenty of talent there, and a good crop of players and a good crop of young players coming through as well to add to it.
Yeah, the conveyor belt looks pretty well set as well. Listen, Paul Curran, pleasure chatting to you. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Not at all, pleasure.
Paul Curran there, All-Ireland winner with Dublin in '95, reacting to the news that Diarmuid Connolly has hung up his inter-county boots. I'm sure we'll see more of him in a Vincent's jersey over the coming years. Right, we are sticking with GEA for now, and we've been chatting to Kerry legend Marc Ó Sé. That is up next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
We're delighted to be joined by Marc Ó Sé to launch The Toughest Season. It is a picture book to be published in collaboration with Sportsfile, documenting this season. The book will be comprised of images from January to October 23rd, 2020, taken by GEA communities nationwide, and those taken by Sportsfile as well. Now, fans can submit their photos by uploading them to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram using the hashtag #TheToughest. The book is going to be published in November, and all the proceeds are going to AIB Together's partner charities, Get a House, Food Cloud, SOAR, Alone, and Age NI and Age UK. You can check out AIBGA on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. Mark, how are things? How's life?
Great on. How are you keeping?
Not too bad now. What has the toughest season comprised of for you?
Well, look, it's like a season like no other on. We started off the year thinking that it was going to be just another year, and look, I was really looking forward to it because I had taken charge of a club team in East Kerry, Listroy, and was really looking forward to the year. And it started off great. For lots of clubs, and unfortunately with the pandemic, we never saw this coming, and the season was cut short, maybe into our second county league game. So very disappointing from that point of view. And then all of a sudden we were doing Zoom sessions online and trying to get the players to tick away and stay relatively fit, having done a good bit of work before the lockdown, and with the view of when we got back that they'd be in good shape again. But you know, as time went on, we understood that this was a long-term thing, and so I gave them a break from the Zoom sessions, and they just worked away. Because I think they needed that break to kind of get recharge, or do their own thing. And it was great then to hear that the club setup and the inter-county setup was coming back. I was delighted to hear that, and the players were delighted to hear that. It was like a breath of fresh air. And I think what we're hearing nationwide is that the amount of players before, maybe there wouldn't have been that many big numbers with club teams training, but then you had more than 30 training with the clubs, which was great to hear. Everyone was at home, which was fantastic as well. And it ended up being a season where the club teams had access to their inter-county players, which isn't the case always. So it was a season like no other, really, and one that we'll never forget.
That's the strange thing about it. You probably expected going in as a strike manager that there would be disruptions to your life as a club manager, considering there are disruptions to the club season every year. Whereas this year you got a full run off and you got the matches played in the best weather possible. Like it really couldn't have gone in a better way in the end for the club manager and the club player.
Yeah, it was great because usually if you look at the club player, and you have to feel sorry for the club player because they can never plan anything, particularly in the counties that go on to the business end of the championship, August, September, even July. It's very hard for the club player to plan holidays with wives or girlfriends or anything like that, because they're waiting for the inter-county team to progress or exit the championship, and then they know that they're on with their club. So it's a very hard thing. But this year it was as I say, it was like no other, in that there was the club year and then there was the inter-county year. And now, whilst that's great, you would still have to feel for the inter-county player, because they are going full on for the club and for the inter-county season. But from a club point of view, I mean, it's fantastic for managers, club managers that have the access of their inter-county players, because usually you don't get access to inter-county players until the Thursday night before a championship game, which is kind of counterproductive. You're trying to work on tactics. You're even trying to do a field session with them, and it's a Thursday night, so your session is very much tapered. So from that point of view, this year was incredible that you were able to kind of work with your players, work closely with your players, and work with your full panel of players, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. Like, is this something then that inter-county players will benefit from? Like you mentioned there, that it's going to be tough going, whatever it's going to be, 4, 5, 6 months straight. But in the long run, if this is a system that we look at for maybe next year or the year after next, is there a way that there can be a real ramping up of the standards, ramping up of the fitness levels throughout the season, where the inter-county player is getting the benefits of both worlds?
Yeah, I think so. I think this year, going on from what I heard, not only in our own county but in other counties, I'd say the inter-county players really enjoyed it, because they were in a situation where they were really enjoying their football, able to go for their few pints when the restaurants open, that is, not the wet pubs. They were able to go for their few pints, so that was great. And I think they enjoyed it and they relaxed a bit, because I think, even when I finished up playing, there was that element of the professionalism coming in, and where, I remember starting off 2001, where it was like after a National League game, it was a night out with the lads, a few jars. And that was, now after National League games, there's nothing. Even after some championship games, there's nothing, because you're straight into a championship game 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, and it's the fun element in a way has gone out of it. Now the inter-county players will tell you it's still very enjoyable, and it is, but certainly I think inter-county players enjoyed, I won't say the time off, but certainly not as much scrutiny in your face as there would be with the inter-county season, where you're going 5 nights flat out, 3 nights in the field, 2 nights in the gym, so I'd say from that point of view, they definitely welcomed that. But in terms of, say, the inter-county, like, say, I'd be a traditionalist. I always love to see the All-Irelands played in the first and the third week of September. We went away from that in the last year or two, but I think that there certainly, this pandemic has thrown up something that we really need to look at and address, and that's the club and the county setup. And I certainly think that the club needs to have its own space and the inter-county needs to have its own space. Now, with the calendar year that's there, something is going to have to give. I myself wouldn't be a big fan of the O'Byrne Cups, the McGrath Cups, the FPDs, the McKenna Cups. I just think that, that there's the inter-county season and the club season is too long. There's players going from December all the way through to the following December, and it doesn't make sense. No, they don't get a break, and I think that it's high time now they look and review the inter-county system, the club system. Something has to give, like I said, and I think that it's maybe the FBDs, the McGrath Cups, the McKenna Cups, and the O'Byrne Cups, because I think there's certain competitions out there that are they're devaluing them, like the likes of the Sigerson Cups, which I think is a great. I think that it's a great competition for the development of college players. It's a competition that I've loved and have great memories from my time in Man Utd and Trinity, and really loved it. And I think that it's where you build up relationships with players from other counties and other teams, and friendships that you have for the rest of your days. You know, I have great friends with the Brogans from Dublin, Alan Dillon, Mayo, and the Barry Cahals from Dublin, and Rory Kavanagh from Donegal. All these lads who I played Sigerson with, and they're friendships that you have for a lifetime. So that's certainly something that I think the GA need to look at. And also, like, I mean, I think they did very well in getting the club season completed, albeit there is one or two counties that have suffered more than others and are still kind of a small bit behind, but getting there. But I think there was a lot of positives this year with the club season, and I think that's something the G will have to go in and look at and try and see, can they just condense things for the championship and condense things for the club season.
For sure. Did you manage to find out this year what sort of manager you're going to be? Did this in a way help you? I mean, you were talking about Zoom sessions. I guess that you had to communicate in a way this year that you possibly never expected. Did you develop as you would have liked as a coach this year?
It was very much going the right way, in that it was set out for the month of April where the games are going to be played, and we were all geared up for that. And it was a season where the club team, they got out of the groups, which was great. They got out of the group stages and made the knockout stages, and unfortunately then we were beaten the knockout stages in the quarter final. And I suppose it was just at a point where we were getting going, just getting things going, and next thing you're out, which was very disappointing. So from that point of view, disappointing in that we didn't get to maybe have another game or two where we could kind of develop things, get maybe players who were injured back. So there was a frustrating side of it, but I certainly enjoyed it. It was very demanding. There was challenges, particularly say when players got injured and trying to replace players, and and that was challenging, certainly. And but look, a great bunch of lads to work with, and I'm still working with them because we're playing in the O'Donoghue Cup, which is the East Kerry district, and looking forward to that. And we'll see where it brings us.
You mentioned there that Listry are part of East Kerry. You would have had a midfielder in Ronan Buckley playing at the weekend, county champions beating Mid Kerry. There's only one player that everybody's talking about from last weekend, though, and it is David Clifford, that incredible goal. I'm keen to get your take on this from a defender's standpoint, because Peter Crowley was the man marking him, and it does seem that there's not much more you can do when you're up against an unbelievable talent like David Clifford in that position, with his audacity as well, which I think is probably the most impressive part about it.
Yeah, and if you look at it, Peter Crowley had a great game. He played excellent. For that ball that went in, it required, if you look at it and just maybe rewind maybe 10 seconds before the goal, and what you see is just incredible movement by David Clifford. He goes right, and then his hand is pointed the other way, and he's looking for the ball on his left hand side, turns on to his right. Even at that stage, Crowley did very to get back into a position, and just looking at it at that stage, you would have said, okay, worst case scenario here, point given up, and he just rockets the ball to the back of the net. That's unmarkable, really, Eoin. It's Crowley did very little wrong. Okay, David lost him for that, just for that half second, he lost him, and David was gone to his left, and it was the pass had to be perfect, which it was. But what a goal! Look, we're looking at a player, one of the greatest that'll come out of our county, and he's only the tender age of 20. Maybe he's gone 21. I'm not so sure, but he's a young man, and already you see the size of him. You see how strong he is. He's only going to get stronger and stronger, and as he will get far more experience as time goes on, and. But already we've seen what he's capable of doing. Even talking to inter-county players from other counties, and having chats with them and them telling me how effective he is, how they've never seen. So look, he's been great. I think the other thing the county championship has drawn up in Kerry is that there's other players that have really performed. The likes of Tony Brosnan from Dr. Crokes. Now, unfortunately, he got a bad injury and punctured his lung. But you would love a situation whereby he was back in and he was really putting pressure on the lads. Because for me, the way I see it is, in your inside line, your go-to guy, he is your go-to guy, and there's positions up for grabs. Now, if you had a Tony Brosnan there, all of a sudden you have like Paul Gainey, James O'Donoghue looking over their shoulder, and that's what competition does. It makes players try and go to the extra level, and that's where Dublin have had it over most teams in the last few years, whereby look, even Bernard Brogan's book there recently where he was trying to knock on the door, and you're knocking on the door, but it's the likes of Conn O'Callaghan, Dean Rock and Paul Mannion that's inside the door. So it's a very hard door to get through. And I think if you had a situation where Tony Brosnan came right just in time for championship, all of a sudden there's a completely different dynamic in the Kerry team, and it's a team that you'd be fearful, particularly there for forward line.
For sure. If you were a coach coming up against David Clifford, what is the blueprint for stopping him? Is it simply double marking? Like, because as you say, sometimes he's unmarkable, but I presume you mean that in a one-on-one sense.
Yeah, it's something myself and Tom O'Sullivan used to often talk about. If you were marking a player that was able to kick right, kick left, the key thing for me is deny possession. Don't let him get the ball. Now, obviously, if you're as good as David Clifford or if you're as good as Conn O'Callaghan, these lads are going to get the ball. And when they do, that's when they build up their momentum. So the key for me is obviously pressure out the field, pressure on the kickers. I often found, particularly playing in Croke Park, and if you were under pressure in the middle of the field, the full back line was a lonely place to play because it was like playing a game of backs and forwards. The ball was constantly coming in. You weren't getting a second break, and it was like trying to keep the tide out. So for me, if you're marking a player of the calibre of David Clifford, of course, there's two ways to look at it. There's one, you can push up. We hear all the talk now with Liverpool and the high press and Jurgen Klopp, what he's brought, and you can do that. And that's something that we used to do with Kerry when we were playing. We used to just push up on our men, don't give them time on the ball. The other thing is obviously players playing defensively. I think with that, the art of defending goes away, and that's something that I wouldn't be gone on either, is this new mark that has come in. One of the greatest challenges was if your man won the ball, you knew that he had to take you on. You knew that, as a good defender, what were you going to do? Were you going to put him on his weak leg? Now with David Clifford, it's clear that he doesn't have a weak leg, but the good defenders would always take him out of his comfort zone. And for me, with I know I'm going off track now a small bit with the mark.
No, not at all.
Like, for me, the mark was it's just taking away from the beauty of the game, because a good defender is able to put his man foot and then maybe get a block. Or if not, look, the player gets the ball and puts it over the bar. But for me, with all these sweepers and all these systems, it certainly does take away from the art of defending. And what I see happening now is that players find it more difficult to actually defend one-on-one. They're not comfortable with defending on one-on-one. And I think, it's no different to high fielding. I think the art of defending is a small bit lost with these new rules coming in.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to ask that about defending one-on-one. It definitely is something that I've observed over the last couple of years, and it seems that defending in front of a forward is far more of a high wire act now than it was 10 years ago. Am I right in saying that? Like, it just seems that if you're in front of your man, the movement of the forwards at the very top level right now is so good that they will find some lane behind you, or they will make you look like a fool. I'm not sure if that's just guesswork on my part.
No, it's not. It's not. Like, it all depends. You're right in a way, because it all depends on who you're marking. And it's something that I used to often do was defend just slightly, and I mean ever so, not even a metre, a half a metre, my man, and I'd always be able to put my hand, be able to touch him. So I'd be looking, but I'd also be looking at the play and be able to touch my man. And because everyone was different, but if he went the other side, that I was able to put my arm out and be able to touch him, and I knew he was close by then. The danger in that is if you do get the perfect ball in, that ball over the top, And, you know, if you're marking fellas who are particularly good over their head, from Kerry's point of view, Gooch was very good over his head. Kieran Donaghy was obviously very good over his head. Roy Keane was good over his head. So, like, it was risky. What it meant for me doing that, constant communication with my goalkeeper behind me, you know, left, right, you know. So there was, you know, it wasn't something that was just you go up and you do. It was kind of, you'd spend hours talking to the likes of Diarmuid Murphy, goalkeepers, you know, Brendan Keeley, Brian Kelly, lads like this, constant communication. And it's something that takes time. But then again, there was defenders that defended differently. Tom O'Sullivan, he completely, you know, he was really fast. So he could nearly play his man behind, still be that fast to get out in front. Whereas I kind of depended on, say, judging where the play was going to come and so that was every different strokes for different folks, but that was, you know, I suppose we're all a bit different, you know.
Mm-hmm. And like maybe that is one of the big lessons from last year's All-Ireland, is that the Stephen Cluxton coming out to act as an extra defender when Johnny Cooper was off the pitch need not be an emergency reflex. It can be something when you're 15 on 15 as well, that you can mark a player like David Clifford from in front of him if your goalkeeper is ballsy enough to actually come in behind him and stay 20 yards, maybe not 20, but 15 yards off his goal line.
Yeah, it's like, you think back in it and you think that, you know, just we had the chance to really, I suppose, drive it home and win that game. And these are fellas, but these are great players, you know, the likes of Stephen Cluxton. These are fellas who aren't really looking to the sideline to ask for the solutions from Jim Gavin. And he will give guidance, there's no doubt. They will regroup at half time and change things up. But here are lads as well who are able to kind of make decisions on the team, on the field. And I'd say there was a bit of both there. I'm sure it is about half time if there was situations whereby, you know, you could do that high press and push out, but it is risky, there's no doubt about that. And if you have players on the team that can take advantage of that risk, then, you know, but like, you know, I suppose it's a game of inches, and Kerry were certainly very unlucky in the draw match. You know, I think we all know that. There was chances, and possibly our best player, David Moore, on the day, you know, it was just unlucky that he was the fellow who gave the ball away towards the end, and you couldn't fault him over the 75, 80 minutes. What a game he had. And look, but as I say, a game of inches and what ifs, but unfortunately just didn't work out.
Yeah, it's mad to think that if he takes the left option instead of running right, Kerry probably would have won the All-Ireland in that moment, and you can't really blame a fella for that at all. It's interesting actually that you talk about risk-taking there. Like, it does seem, and I know this is kind of like based on the Clifford goal as well at the weekend, that forwards anyway are willing to take that bit more of a risk these days. We'd Michael Quinlivan on the show a couple of years ago talking about how there's just way more of a culture within forwards at the moment to think about the upside when you're within 20 yards of goal, even if there's a fella between you and the sticks, that going for the goal, going for the 3 points, going for the jugular is something that is to be encouraged at the moment. Is that the way you've seen the game going?
Yeah, I do. I see it going that way. I see kind of, you know, there's like, how many people out there want to be a Conor O'Callaghan or a David Clifford or a Paul Mannion? A load of people want to be, you know, and I blame the Gooch for it, because when he was playing, they all wanted to be the Gooch, and nobody wanted to be Mike McCarthy or Tom O'Sullivan or anyone like that. But so it's the Gooch's fault. But there certainly is, like, it's out. I think that, you know, there is an emphasis, and I think it's a great thing within a player. I think it's a bit of a killer instinct when you need a score, and, like, you know, if it's on. But obviously, there's you play cleverly, you watch clever as well, you know, and situations when it requires a point or ticking over, or have that killer instinct where you have that goal in you. And but I think, you know, certain players have that, and it's just a composure within the player that's able to do that. And as I say, you know, if you're marking one of those players, you even mentioned Michael Quinlivan there, what a fantastic player. You know, really, really tough days out marking him, particularly in Thurles Semple Stadium. Great player. So, you know, there's certain players that have that skill just to be able to take the man on. And I mean, we look back there at the All-Ireland final a few years ago, Conor O'Callaghan. Was it the first minute of the game, or was it, I I forget if it was the semi-final. I think it was the final against Mayo, where he just goes straight through into the hill and gets that goal. And just
against Tyrone, wasn't it?
Oh, was it Tyrone? Yeah, you're right. Tyrone. But just that run and for me, you talk about players and you talk about inside forwards. What's the hardest thing to defend? Excuse me. That's the toughest thing to defend. Is that fella, if he gets a run on you, taking you on, that's for me. It's what you do then. You obviously try and get a hand in when he's taking a hop or a solo. If you can get close. If not, it's pulling a fella down. And as we know now, pulling a fella down is not only a free, but it's also a black card. So, it's so dangerous when a fella has that explosiveness, like Conor O'Callaghan, that can take you on. So for me, we are lucky. And if I'm being honest, if I was taking a forward any day long, I would be taking David Clifford, because for me, he's just extraordinary. He's maybe I'm a bit biased in that now, but he is extraordinary. I don't think anyone has reached his heights in the current game. But Conor O'Callaghan is, I think the Dubs are very happy with him. He's just incredible.
Oh, absolutely. I think I'm actually getting confused myself. Wasn't it both days out he scored an early goal? It was Tyrone and Mayo in back-to-back games. Just incredible. Actually, put this, I know I'm putting you on the spot with this question, but it definitely seemed that the last night, when a goal was scored in such amazing fashion, the wind went out of the opposition sails more so than just a regular goal. What is the best goal you've conceded, or was there ever a moment like that? I mean, the obvious ones that come to my mind anyway would have been any of the McManaman goals, that they're scored in fairly emphatic fashion. They kind of loop over the goalkeeper. Is that something that you read into it all, or like that you are deflated by such a kind of a weird, unlikely event occurring on the pitch?
Yeah, I think the two McManaman goals. The first one in 2011, I didn't have. It was only in the end of the move that I was with the goalkeeper, because I was marking Bernard Brogan. So in those situations, if you have a 2v1, which it ended up on towards the end, I have to kind of be halfway between me and Brogan, but also trying to get close to McManaman. But he pulled the trigger, I'd say, outside the box. So in terms of, if you look back on that, there isn't much I could have done there. From a team point of view, you'd like to think if you had that situation back again, that you would have pushed up there and then. And I mean out by the Dublin 45, where the move started, where the ball broke down, and push up there. Because I think what we did was we retreated, which, it was madness really when you think of it. But for the 2013 goal, certainly, I was out towards the middle of the field. Bernard Brogan was gone off at that stage. He'd already done his damage. But I remember the high ball coming out, and I was going for it because David Moore and Michael Darragh were to the left of me, and I'm in mid-air then, and halfway, I think it actually was Michael Darragh gets his hand to it, and I'm still in the air, and the ball is gone, and you have to get down, and you're getting back, and McManaman had, I'd say, maybe 2 yards on me. So, and that game was still in the balance, as we well know, until that goal. And to this day, I don't know, was he going for a goal or a pint, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's that good at scoring goals. I think he was going for the goal. But that's a moment, all right, that sticks in the memory, where if you had another opportunity at that, you would have changed things up a bit.
Yeah, it's like asking to choose between two of your least favourite enemies at that point. But I get the sense there that you sleep a little bit easier at night over the 2013 goal rather than a 2011 goal, because at least the 2013 goal was, I don't know, the intentions were right, maybe, and you sat back in 2011. That's what I'm getting there.
Well, with the 2011 one, I had to sit back because, if I didn't, the ball would have been slipped into Bernard Brogan and it was a goal anyway. So, in that situation, a defender will kind of try and go halfways, but at the same time, make the decision basically on. And McManaman made the decision, and he scored a goal.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Just one last thing then. This year's championship, obviously, it's who knows how this is going to go? Who knows what sort of things we're reading into now will actually come to fruition? But one of these things is preparing for a winter championship. Like, I mean, I'm sure your team of the 2000s would have, I guess, stylistically loved the hard ground of the summer. If you had to face into a winter championship, your prospects might be diminished a little bit. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case for many of the top teams this winter. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I'd like a situation whereby and you see a lot of the grounds to be confirmed where the game's going to be played. You'd like a situation where the grounds are going to be in good shape, where even though like inter-county teams have access to club ground or to their home ground, be it Fitzgerald Stadium for Kerry, Páirc Uí Chaoimh for Cork, we always know that Croke Park is in impeccable shape at all times. You'd love a situation where all these games are going to be played, that there isn't going to be much traffic in the fields beforehand. That's the first thing I'd like to see anyway. Secondly, I think that even if I just take, say, Kerry's opening game, with my Kerry hat on, we've seen this year, before the lockdown, how strong Cork were, albeit in Division 3. But they obviously have been showing huge signs of improvement. I know I was accused of cute Kerry tourism, trying to play up Cork earlier and all that, but I genuinely think that they have made strides. Now, you add into that the factor this year that it's the first time that it's a pure knockout. You're going back as far as 2000, 20 years since the last knockout, which for me it's going to make it so much more interesting. Can you imagine Kerry going down to Cork looking for a result? Cork have improved. You saw Kerry last year below there. Cork really put the pressure on with the goals. So they're really going to fancy their chances. And now, whilst I still expect Kerry to come through that's going to be a major battle, particularly the fact that there's that whoever loses is out. So it's like you're really fighting on your back, and that's the element that this championship is going to bring more so than any other. And the other side of that then, though, which counteracts a small bit, is that there's going to be hardly anyone on the ground. So it is going to be a bit surreal from that point of view. But I still think that there's going to be a bite to this championship that is like no other, because they're going to be mad to get back playing inter-county football. And I think it's going to be a fantastic. And the other side of it, Eoin, is that excuse me. The other side of it is that, say, with the Super 8s in the last few years, and it has been great. And if you look at the National League and the way the top 8 teams, you would say the top 7 that are in the National League Division 1 at the moment will more than likely, if in the last 2 years, and this would be the Super 8s, give or take 1 or 2 teams. I think that the Super 8s lends itself. It's handy for the top teams. If you saw Dublin in the last few years, Jim Gavin won the first 2 games. He's able to put out a B team above Tyrone. You're able to rest players. If on the other side you play a poor match, then you still have 2 games to still get into the semis. So from my point of view, this is do or die. This is knockout. And it is going to bring an unbelievable excitement to the championship this year. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait either. It should be fantastic. Just a reminder that you've been listening or watching to Marc Ó Sé to launch The Toughest Season, a picture book to be published in collaboration with Sportsfile, documenting the season. The book will be comprised of images from January to October 23rd, taken by GAA communities nationwide this year, and those taken by Sportsfile. Fans as well can submit their photos, and you can get them on via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Just use the hashtag The Toughest. The book will be published in November, and the proceeds are going to AIB Together's partner charities, Pieta House, Food Cloud, SOAR, Alone, and Age NI and Age UK. And make sure to check out AIB GAA on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Marc Ó Sé, pleasure as ever. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Thanks very much.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Brady and Belichick have been at the forefront of the credit in New England for the last 20 years.
OTB's American Football Show, The Snap on OTB Sports Radio.
Burrow very much thrown in the deep end. He seems to have the correct temperament. I've never been totally won over by his actual talent, to be honest.
Keep updated with American football on OTB. Tune into The Snap every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football.
Gary Neville just rocks up tomorrow and says, yeah, I'll be a coach. No.
The third episode sees Gary Neville and Teddy Sheringham sit down for an in-depth chat, which will be brought to you on OTB social channels and OTB Sports Radio on Monday the 5th of October. Check out CadburyFC.com for updates on promotions and giveaways.
Into sports.
20 yards out, Ursh to shoot. Oh, what a goal from Fabinho! Wow!
Then get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what do we get a slap?
Plus, exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports, ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
OTB AM.
It is 19 minutes past 9 and it is time for the sports pages this morning. Just to give you a flavour of what's happening, Jose makes Doherty feel special. That is the headline on the Irish Examiner this morning. That is the lead ahead of their preview of their Europa League fixture tonight. You've got in the Irish Times then Dundalk leading the way this morning. Emmett Malone writing about their huge Europa League tie tonight. The headline on the Irish Times is "Great expectations bring their own pressures for Dundalk." Meanwhile, the Irish Daily Star leads with the headline "Brolly good." This morning, it is in relation to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer having his umbrella held for him in the build-up to the game last night. The opening paragraph from Jeremy Cross's match report: Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was blasted for being a wally with a brolly, but he ended up jolly after Manchester United won. The Daily Telegraph leads with "British failure sparks furious row." This is with regards to tennis. Mata's milestone. Spaniard scores his 50th goal for Manchester United, and it is United that is leading the way in most of the back pages this morning. The Irish Sun, "Knive a point to prove" is the main headline, accompanied by a photograph of Filippo Giovagnoli. He's eyeing the Europa cut. Flying Scotsman sends United into last 8. Meanwhile, is the other headline on the back of the Irish Sun. The Racing Post front page this morning, meanwhile, Arc punters taking the plunge on Unexposed in swoop, while Hill's UK business set to be sold after £2.9 billion takeover. That is the sale of William Hill. My time is up, reads the back of the Irish Daily Mail, leading the way, the only newspaper this morning leading the way with the Diarmuid Connolly news. Of course, it broke late last night. We'll have more on that in just a moment with Kieran Donaghy, who is standing by. Connolly retires after a storied Dublin career is their sub-headline there. A bit of a surprise to a lot of people that he did decide to pull the plug on the intercounty career and announce it last night, it seems. Leinster to go fully loaded for league opener. Meanwhile, this is Roy Keane also in the Irish Daily Mail saying that Leo Cullen is set to roll out the big guns for Leinster's Pro 14 season opener against the Dragons at the RDS tomorrow. And United get a welcome lift is another headline on the back of the Irish Daily Mail. The London Times then is "Top flight's blackmail over bailout." EFL told back key demands, I should say, or lose £200 million deal. So Top flight's blackmail over bailout. That is the lead on the London Times this morning. We are returning to the Diarmuid Connolly story this morning, though, and Kieran Donaghy is with us. How are you getting on, Kieran?
Good on. How are you, man?
All good, all good. Are non-Dublin supporters, non-Dublin players breathing a sigh of relief this morning?
Yeah, of course, that we don't have to worry about the Maestro anymore. It's an ease to everybody that's not a Dublin fan, I would say, this morning.
Like we were chatting with Paul Curran a little bit earlier on, and he's very surprised that this news has come now. Are you the same? Are you in that camp, or did you see this coming?
I wouldn't be really surprised, really, to be honest, with anything that happens kind of on Diarmuid's side with Dublin. He's always kind of shocked us, whether he stepped away, whether he's been, there's been issues before where he's been off the panel, on the panel. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? So nothing would surprise me really with him on that side of things. But in regards to the footballing ability. Nothing surprises us there either when he's playing, because he can do anything. He's multi-talented. He's one of these generational type players, but also he's a generational type athlete. One of many of the Dublin guys that could really play anywhere from 15 probably back to 5. You could literally see Connolly with any one of those numbers on his back and be equally as devastating as a player on the pitch. Probably ideally as centre forward, where I thought he was at his best, but midfield, full forward. He's played corner forward, wing forward. And I'm sure if you horsed him in at centre back, he'd be an absolute nightmare for the opposition too. So an amazing talent, really, considering a player of that ability, and knowing that he could actually play in any one of those positions and dominate a game explains to you kind of how much of a quality footballer this guy is. And you couple that with the athletic ability and his frame and his size and his big game temperament, you were dealing with a tough animal to stop on a big day.
How much of a concern was he on any given day taking on the Dubs?
Look, I suppose when it came to the tail end of my career, he was one of many, but he was always top of the list for guys to try and watch out for. And obviously, you're putting one of your best defenders on him. But of course, he's a thorny side because of his raw power and speed, combined with being able to kick off either leg, combined with being fantastic in the air, combined with being able to pick off passes that most other humans can't see, and having a bit of an edge and having a bit of you know, I liked the bit of an edge he had. You know, I liked that side of him on the pitch, because he was never going to back down. You weren't going to push him around the place. And, you know, he fitted well into that Dublin team. There had a lot of fellas at the back like that, but he was probably the main guy in the forwards that would set the tone with body language and not taking a backward step. And he did that his whole career. And, you know, he was a joy to watch on any given day, bar the times he beat us when he was a pain to watch.
And also as well, I guess, it's just the whole emotional lift that he would give if he was coming on as a sub or with a big moment. I mean, you would have felt the brunt of the hill being on your back, but Diarmuid Connolly felt the exact opposite. The adulation that you heard coming from that sea of blue whenever he did anything in Croke Park.
Yeah, precisely. You know, he was always in the news, and that's what I meant by my first point earlier, that I wouldn't be surprised when he stepped away, because he was kind of always in the news in the lead up to the game. Whether is he going to be on the squad? Is he left the squad? Is he going to be on the team? Is he going to be a sub? You know, he was always that guy, and he was the pantomime villain, which I know well, playing against Dublin, playing in front of the hill. I was that to them, but you know, he was certainly the pantomime villain for all the other fans, and I think he loved that. And he also, of course, he loved being adored by those in the hill. And why wouldn't he be adored by those in the hill? He was Dublin through and through. He was a bio, and not only was he that, but he could back it up with all the skills of the game, kick fantastic points, and just be a general powerhouse around the pitch. So of course they loved him. And like when you look at his resume, it's second to none. He's 6 All-Ireland medals. I can't believe he only has 2 All-Stars. That's shocking to me for how good of a footballer he is. So, you know, maybe that other side to him, you know, I don't know the guy off the pitch, but maybe that other side to being in the news all the time, maybe it might have cost him a few All-Stars. But it's crazy to think a player that was at the top of his game since 2011, winning All-Irelands, has only 2 All-Stars to show for it. No, look, the strength of that Dublin team and the amount of All-Stars they were getting may have something to do with it as well. But you know, I think he was always the talking point, and his football always did the talking when it had to, which is the most important thing.
Kieran, we spoke to you, I think it was last year after Diarmuid made his return to the Dublin fold, but you said you compared him to LeBron James, and you know, say it's like they've signed a free agent and they've got LeBron James back and they're a step away from the championship. Has Diarmuid Connolly been the LeBron James of Gaelic games for the past 5 or 10 years?
No, I don't think he's the LeBron James, but he's what I meant by that was just the whole free agency kind of signing. But he's more of a kind of like Cantona figure. He's more of that kind of abrasive, collar up if he could wear it up, you know, in your face, has all the skill, has all the touches. is a bit of a renegade away from the white lines, and but always delivers when counts. And I think if you look at Cantona's resume and Connolly's resume, when they were needed most in big games, they always delivered. And that's the one thing he'll always have, is that he always delivered when it counted, and all the other stuff will be forgotten about. What will be remembered when he's playing, when people think of him in 20 or 30 years, is those renegade runs down the pitch, crashing into fellas, kicking points, swiveling on the outside of the boot, off either boot, inside of the boot, off either boot. If you look at that kind of skill package, the dummy solos, just the power, the strength of him, he was a handful. There's no back going out the night before a game, including the very best that went toe-to-toe with him and may have levelled out with him, the likes of Lee Keegan. But there was none of them sitting down the night before. There's none of them that will honestly tell you that they couldn't wait to go toe-to-toe with him. There'd always be that level of kind of, I really have to be on the top of my game. There'd be fierce trepidation there if you were going in playing a guy like that, because at any minute he can do something special that'll win a game for the team you're playing against.
You mentioned the Cantona comparison there, and Cantona had moments like the chip in off the post and turning around slowly to face the whole crowd. Well, like we were speaking this morning about different Diarmuid Connolly moments that I guess there was the club final in 2014. I think there was the Donegal game in 2014 as well. Yeah. The Tyrone quarterfinal in 2011. What it's probably hard when you're standing on the pitch with him to stand back and observe and enjoy him. But what are your highlights of Diarmuid Connolly's career?
I like probably the pass last year against Kerry was I'm not sure it was meant for Kilkenny. It might have been meant for Mannion. I think it was coming out inside him, but it doesn't matter who it was meant for, because it was going to fall into either of their laps. Kilkenny caught it up here, Mannion would have caught it into his chest. But just at that stage of the game, I think Dublin might have been up a point or 2 points, and just to see the vision of it and to be able to see it and then be able to execute it. And I think I saw a pass in the club championship this year too, in Parnell Park, where he played an absolute beauty of a ball over the top that led to a goal. So he always had that eye for the pass, but he backed, and he has natural talents. But don't get me wrong, Diarmuid Connolly was the young guy that was down the pitch kicking non-stop. You can say natural ability, and people used to say that, including me, about the gooch and these type of kind of once-off classic players. And it's natural, and they're gifted and all that, but these guys put in more work than anybody else on a football pitch, and that's the bottom dollar when it comes to those skills. But I would say that pass, and maybe his point off of, I think it was 16 against us on the left leg when they were a point up, the 74th minute, there was a minute to go. If that was me coming through, I wouldn't be taking that kick anyway, but I would have said, look, we're a point up, I'm not going to kick this from 40 yards on my left leg, going away from goals into the hill, which is the tougher end maybe to kick into, in case I drop it short and give Kerry a chance to come down and equalise in the last minute. Never crossed his mind, never broke stride, came onto it and kicked a wonder score into the hill to give him the 2 points, and probably saw them out of that game in what was a titanic game in those probably 2 or 3 games that we played against Dublin. They were all titanic battles, 11, 13 and 16, and that point was a crucial one, as much as kind of Alan Brogan's was against us in 15. So they were probably 2 of the scores and moments that catch up. But even that Donegal game you were talking about, Dublin had a nightmare that day in the second half, but Connolly throughout was unbelievable, carrying the fight to them until it was gone. So he's those 2, I would say, the pass last year against Kerry in the final, and he's gone out on top. So as I said earlier, it doesn't surprise me. He's done it all. He won't have to live with the headaches of the badgering off the pitch anymore. He'll be able to go in and absolutely excel at club level for the next. He's 33. He could play, I'd say, 7 years at club. He's in phenomenal shape. I don't see him not playing club football. I don't see Vincent's not being able to use him. Bar injury is the only reason I don't see Connolly going on. And obviously his will to want to go on and do more for Vincent's and win more Club All-Irelands and county titles or whatever. That'll be the only thing that'll stop him going on playing many more years for his club.
Does this bring Dublin back to the pack ever so slightly?
Oh, does it bring him back to the pack?
Just a tad back. Obviously they're well ahead of the pack, but I'm just saying, is it a setback?
Look, you're losing him. So look, it is a bit of a setback for them. But I don't think this Dublin team, look, they've got Con Callahan that's ready to take on the Connolly torch for the next 10 or 15 years, like Clifford took it off Gooch a few years ago. It's not, the jersey's always bigger than you, and he will be a loss to this Dublin team, but this Dublin team are in such a place with the players they have that I don't think, it'll have too much of an effect on them. But in saying that, when the game's in the melting pot and there's 10 minutes to go and you're bringing on a player and you're thinking, geez, I could be bringing on Diarmuid Connolly, of course you'd probably prefer to bring him on. So he may be a loss to them in that regard. But, I think this Dublin machine rolls on no matter who retires, whether it's a Bernard Brogan, whoever, them wheels keep on churning forward, and they're producing great athletes and great players in underage teams, and they'll be right there. So I don't think it affects them overly. But, if they lose a game by a point this year, of course it's going to be looked back and going, geez, if they Connolly with 15 minutes to go, what could have happened? So that's where I probably see that line.
Yeah, that's it's going to be very interesting to see what does happen. The gap is still there. Kieran, great stuff this morning. We'll chat to you in another time.
Yeah, perfect. No hassle.
Cheers. Great stuff there from Kieran Donaghy. Right, here is clubmate Mossy Quinn last summer talking about playing with Diarmuid Connolly.
I think everyone's overthinking it a little bit, yeah. Sorry, I think Diarmuid first and foremost can help on the pitch, and I think he kind of proved that at the weekend. Obviously in a lower intensity game than what they're going into this weekend, but his skill set that he brings, and Anthony talked about the runs forwards, you can make any run. Like, as in, you don't have to, sometimes when you're inside and you're looking at the person out the pitch, you kind of have to make your run based on their skill set. So if a certain player's coming, like Jack's strength is carrying the ball, he's a good kick passer, but he's a brilliant ball carrier. Whereas with Diarmuid, if he has the ball in his hand, you can make any run, and generally he looks for the most dangerous one. So as an inside forward, if you're going to show, instead of having to maybe show out to the stand side so it can be popped in front, well, I can go a yard here and then cut back, and he's going to look for that, and we've a goal chance on, So I think he brings that element to the game. I also think, if you look at it, like Mayo a couple of years ago, when he came on at half-time, they had Keegan detailed to Kieran Kilkenny. They didn't change that, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see a different management team back again this year, whether they change it, but I think he's a serious option going forward.
Yeah, that is Mossy Quinn talking about Diarmuid Connolly. If you're just joining us this morning, we have had Paul Curran already on with us earlier on. He is largely surprised by the news that Diarmuid Connolly has decided to hang up his boots. We've also just had Kieran Donaghy on, and we're going to be joined by Colm Boohig in just a moment as well to chat through Serena Williams and what's been happening at the French Open over the last couple of days. We're also going to have Johnny Ward with us a little bit later on, because we're going to be chatting about Dundalk and their massive game tonight in the Europa League. Colm, how are things?
Morning, Eoin. Morning, Shane.
So Serena Williams, we've had this conversation quite a bit over the last year or so about chasing down Margaret Court's record. Things have got a little bit more difficult for her, but she doesn't seem to be worried that the current injury is going to set her back too much.
No, she's described it as an acute injury. This is the Achilles injury that she announced that she has sustained yesterday. So she pulled out of her second round tie with Svetlana Perankova, who she actually beat in the quarterfinals of the US Open a few weeks ago. And it was the following match that she originally sustained the injury against Victoria Azarenka in the semi-final of the US Open. So her next match after that was the first round of this French Open, which she won in straight sets against her compatriot Christiane. Tight first set 7-6, but then blew Anne away in the second set 6-love. Showed no signs of any injury whatsoever. Mentioned it in passing in the post-match press conference, but nothing major. Then the morning of the second round encounter, minutes before she was supposed to take to the court, she announced that she was withdrawing from the French Open. And so it goes on whether she will ever equal Margaret Court's record of 24 Grand Slams.
Let's hear from Serena Williams. Here's what she's been saying this week.
I tried, I always give 100%, and everyone knows that, but maybe even more than 100 if that's possible. But, and that is, I take solace in that. And I think Achilles is a real injury that you don't want to play with, because that is not good. If it gets worse, I think it's one of the worst. So I don't want it to get to that point where I actually have a chance to get better.
Yeah, Serena Williams there speaking this week. She was also talking about the fact that, she's just going to sit down for a couple of weeks and just a little training after that. That it does seem, Colm, that in her sights is Margaret Court still. Like, I guess this is the competitive instinct in her coming out, but it doesn't seem that at first this might have seemed like a huge setback to us, but it doesn't seem in her own head that that's the case.
No, she's taking a calculated risk here. She turned 39 the day before the French Open started. She's won the French Open 3 times, but she's won the Australian Open 7 times and Wimbledon 7 times. And I think that's what she's looking at for 2021. So she's going to sit out the rest of this tournament. She's not going to play for the rest of the year. And I think she's looking at Melbourne in January, should that go ahead with coronavirus permitting, of course. That she's going to look at either Down Under as her chance to equal the record, or I would say Wimbledon next year, which will happen. If she doesn't in either of those two tournaments, I don't think she ever will equal that record. I think she has 2 chances left now, and that's what the fascination of 2021 will be.
For sure. The last couple of days have been crazy, really. What happened in the Sarah Errani match?
It was just madness. I mean, I know that tennis is down the pecking order in terms of spectator interest in sport in Ireland, but this is one of those matches where everyone will watch it who has a passing interest in sport. Errani, on her service game, threw up the ball and aborted her serve, i.e. caught the ball again in her hand, between 75 and 100 times in the match. So the standard would be that a player would do that maybe once or twice in a match. You would actually see it in pretty much every single match. A player will throw up the ball, they'll get their toss wrong, they'll catch it, they'll apologise to their opponent, and then the next time they'll serve properly. But what was happening with Errani was between 75 and 100 times she was aborting her serve. At one point, she did it 3 times in a row, and the umpire just had enough and deducted her a point and moved on to the next point. And then Errani did it again and again and again. And on the 7th time...
Is this shithousery or is it the yips?
No, it's the yips. It is classic yips. This is... Errani has a history of doing this, even in qualifying for this French Open, which she had to do. She did the same thing. A clip emerged yesterday on Twitter. The exact same thing happened. Now, the funny thing with Errani is that this is a pretty elite player. She got to a French Open final in 2012. Mm-hmm. She got to a US Open semi-final, an Australian Open quarter-final. So she's a brilliant player, but she can't serve. And she gets the yips, and she's otherwise brilliant. And this match with Kiki Bertens, who was ranked 5 in this tournament, went the distance. In fact, Errani had match point, but Bertens won. There was 24 breaks of serve in total, but Errani just couldn't serve. She couldn't physically serve, and when she did, on the occasion that she did, she either did an underarm serve or she hit it so long that it hit the baseline first before bouncing at all. And credit to Bertens, she kept focused throughout the whole time, so she was alert to any underarm service action. But you mentioned shithousery on. There was a lot of that otherwise in the match. There was a lot of tension between the pair.
Colm, you mentioned the 60 ball tosses Errani failed to hit, and I find it incredible that a top-level tennis player, especially at a major, can't hit proper serves. And these dysfunctional underarm serves that you mentioned, Nick Kyrgios has been known to do it as well. Is there any science behind that? Is it actually a smart serve? Is it a decent skill to have in your bank, or is it, as we've mentioned already, complete shithousery?
If you do it right, it's brilliant. You have to time it right, and also your technique has to be right. And it's a good question because Mackenzie McDonald was playing Rafa Nadal yesterday. Mackenzie McDonald's a very talented player, but Nadal was just blowing him out of the water. So McDonald tried something different and went for an underarm serve, but he hit it so deep that it basically just set up Nadal for an open goal equivalent, and Nadal just smashed it back for a forehand winner. So you have to have, your opponent has to be way back beyond the baseline to receive the serve. A bit like Dominic Thiem would do that. He'd stand way back, and then he might catch them off guard. Kyrgios is brilliant at doing it when he does do it, but Errani wasn't being smart. Errani just couldn't physically serve, so she had to go for the underarm because she couldn't serve properly. That's why it happened. But the match itself was brilliant because Bertens was getting cramp all over her body, and Errani was mocking her for her cramp. So the tension was outrageous. And Bertens left the court on a wheelchair after the match because her cramp was so overbearing for her that she couldn't get up and walk off. Errani wasn't having any of that, stormed off the court after the match. And in the post-match press conference said, I just saw her in the locker room in the restaurant. She's fine. I don't know what was wrong with her. But I don't think she understands what cramp is, that it goes as fast as it comes. But there was no love lost. It was fantastic.
Brilliant. Just want to keep an eye over the next little while. Who's going to win the women's side of things, Colm?
I think Simona Halep will win again. She won in 2018. I think she'll beat Muguruza in the final.
And Nadal looking good on the other side?
Nadal is imperious at the moment, but the final should be Nadal against Djokovic, and that will be an incredible match. Nadal is going for 4 in a row and 13 overall. He's won 95 of his 97 French Open matches, but at the same time, I still think Djokovic will actually win this whole thing.
Very interesting. Colm, we'll catch up again next week. Thanks a million.
Cheers.
Right, here is Filippo Giovagnoli looking ahead to Dundalk's massive Europa League qualifier at the Aviva Stadium tonight. We're going to be chatting to Johnny Ward next.
Well, this is a question that I had already. We had 5 games. This is the 5th game. Every game they ask me, okay, if you win tomorrow, you're going to get the job. If you win tomorrow, you're going to get the job. I don't think it's this. I don't think it's win this game that is going to judge my job at Dundalk. But, of course, this is a bigger opportunity than my job, you know? It's something bigger than to have an opportunity to extend my contract. This is something that, like you said, is going to make history for the club, for Ireland. So if Filippo extends his contract, it's really secondary.
But does Filippo want the job beyond this season?
Yes.
Would you like to say?
Yes. Yes, of course I want the job because I like the club. I like what the club can become with the right project, with the right thing. I would love to help the club build something successful in the future.
And if they were to get 3 to 4 million euro from qualifying for the Europa League, that helps that process a lot.
I mean, I'm not the guy that is gonna count the cash, right?
I'm not trying to put pressure on you, but if they were to win, it's huge for the club in terms of that investment.
of course. But if you want to build a project in the club, it's not just have a prize that is gonna change the way to think the soccer for the club, right? Because then money in 1 year are gonna end again. So if you don't have a direction, a vision, and the mission, I mean, you're not gonna go anywhere. It's just gonna be another historic game, but for the club, then you have to build something special for the future.
Hey, Johnny Ward, good morning.
Good morning, Eoin. How are you?
Very well. So in my opinion, there are 2 different types of football managers in the world. There are football managers who talk about themselves in the third person, and there are football managers who don't talk about themselves in the third person. Filippo Giovagnoli falls into the first camp.
Yeah, is that a bad thing, is it?
I don't know. There are plenty of great managers who do that, so it depends what sort of third person naming manager you're going to be.
He's definitely endeared himself, I think, to people at the club and the media over here. You know, he probably had to deal with the questions yesterday about the fact that I think it was called he was stabbed in the back, or there were knives in the back, because obviously he was coming to a club that was in turmoil, really, and he was probably ridiculed a bit as this guy who coached kids in America, and there was that cap of him, you know, or that photo of him with his cap on at the summer camps or whatever, and to take a job as big as Dundalk's, which I think if it were put out to the market would attract a serious candidate. Obviously he was ridiculed, but he just seems to be a very likable character, and we've now landed in this situation where they're a very probable victory away from getting to the Europa League. So it's been a crazy year on many fronts, but the story of Dundalk getting to the Europa League or otherwise is right up there with everything else that's happened in terms of craziness.
Really, like I guess it is bordering on not the farcical, but it's definitely eyebrow raising when you consider that if they win tonight, there will be only 3 managers who will have achieved that feat of getting them to group stages. It will have been Michael O'Neill, Stephen Kenny, and Filippo Giovagnoli. It does kind of jar to put his name in that, but from the way you're talking, Johnny, there's already a good body of work done here where he's got the respect of the fans and of the League of Ireland in general.
Yeah, I mean, they lost to Shamrock Rovers 4-0 at the weekend, which effectively is something of a second team, and there weren't any fans at that game. It would have been interesting to see what sort of reaction there would have been, but I think Dundalk fans were they respected the fact that he was catapulted into what he apparently told friends himself was a kamikaze mission, and he and his assistant, they're both Italians. They do speak very well, and they're very positive, and obviously we had Shane Keegan on at the weekend, and you do get the vibe from Shane that the players just do really like the guys, but it's very early days on. I mean, you know, what they've achieved in 3 or 4 games is laudable, but in the overall scheme of things, you know, you can't be jumping the gun and saying that this could be a long-term success. It's far too early, and if you isolate Dundalk's form at the minute, they're still way off where they were, you know, in the peak of, say, 2016. But by hook or by crook, they've gotten to a situation where they can kind of save the club from from a financial problem, maybe not a problem, but serious financial losses over the last couple of years, partly COVID related. This can basically, wipe out all the losses that they've had and put them on a firm financial footing and probably keep them up there with Shamrock Rovers, because at the moment they've almost exactly half the points tally of Shamrock Rovers in the league this season. It's an unbelievable fall from grace considering they were expected to win the league by most people at the start of the season. They've 18 points. I think Shamrock Rovers have 35. They've fallen a long way behind them. So it's very important for the club in terms of money that they get through tonight.
Johnny, I read a piece this week talking about Peak Six, the Dundalk owners, and the focus they want to put on European ambitions above domestic ambitions. So is that a healthy thing going forward, do you think, for League of Ireland clubs, if the likes of Dundalk kind of set aside their chances and their hopes of winning a League of Ireland title in order to reach the group stages of something like the Europa League?
Well, they're capitalist driven, obviously, Shane. And there's nothing really wrong with the way that Peak operates, and Peak Six operates, and it has a pretty good track record. And it probably maybe give the two fingers to people in Ireland who didn't for years invest in Irish football, and Peak Six basically came in to show, well, there's actually a lot of money in European football, and you can put together a team in Ireland for what's really a small amount of money in the overall scheme of things. Bear in mind, we're one of the richest countries in the world in which to live, and we've an impoverished football league, and they've looked at the fact that, well, if you get to Europe, you can get it was widely said around 6 million or whatever was the figure in when they got there under Stephen Kenny. This year is a bit different, obviously, with COVID, but still it's 3 to 4 million of riches in the Europa League if they get there this evening. And maybe, Dundalk have won leagues. The prize money for winning the league is shambolic in Ireland. So, the manager at the start of the season was Vinnie Perth. He did want to win the league, but arguably, European money is so significant now that for the likes of Peak Six, it made more sense for them to obviously, target this. But in order for them to be doing that, they kind of need to be winning leagues. We've seen the draw Shamrock Rovers got versus the draw that champions can get. So Dundalk's challenge next season is going to be a hell of a lot different, and that's if they get to Europe at all, which itself isn't actually guaranteed.
You mentioned that Dundalk will be favourites for this game, and that's definitely the case. But I guess you have no fans in the Aviva Stadium, and this is a Faroese team, Claxmacar, looking to make their own history in reaching the group stages. I know you spoke on your LOI Weekly podcast with a Faroese football expert, which I'm sure you don't get the chance to do too often. But what will they bring to this game, and are they a threat at all? How do you expect the game to pan out?
Well, where are you from in Monaghan, right?
Monaghan town.
So what's the population of Monaghan town?
About between 5,000 and 10,000, I'd say. 5,000, yeah.
So these come from a place smaller than that again. Basically, I think it's a small little kind of port town, maybe the size of 5,000 people, coming from a country itself of 50,000 people, which is little more than the population of Dundalk and its surrounding area. And for them to be at this level is utterly fanciful, really. But to be fair to them, they were to play Slovan Bratislava in the Champions League qualifier. Slovan arrived in the Faroes with players suffering from the coronavirus, and basically they were given a bye there. Lost to Young Boys in Switzerland away, but actually scored in that game. And if you watch their game against Tbilisi, they had 29% possession, but they got 6 goals, and that's absolutely bonkers. They're clearly not that bad. I watched a Faroese team play Ballymena last year up north, and they're not bad for the population of the country. It's insanely good. It's right up there with Iceland in terms of what Icelandic clubs and the Icelandic national team have done. They're really something for us to completely admire. And Dundalk can't take them for granted, Shane, because Chris Shields is out, and we saw in the cup final last year against Shamrock Rovers the loss that he was. And I think that brings uncertainty to a midfield area that has been under flux really for well over a year at this stage, with injuries and players coming in. Robbie Benson left. Some of the players they brought in have been a kind of a mixed success. And you have, I don't care what anyone says, Dundalk are not playing as well as they have been able to play in recent years. If Dundalk were taking on a decent first division team in the FAI Cup at the moment, they wouldn't be bankers to win. And as such, tonight against a Faroese team that's well put together and is punching above its weight and will realise the possibilities that is presented to a team from the Faroe Islands, they can't take it for granted. I'd have to advertise that a lot.
Yeah, it's remarkable, actually, their story. I mean, not everybody, but a huge section of their starting team are from that little town of 5,000 people. This isn't some big money project where, as you say, brought in a lot of Icelandic players or something like that. This is actually quite a homegrown, quite a tale for other countries as well, where with the right investment and the right facilities, it's incredible what you can do. How will Dundalk deal with that favourites tag? You obviously touch on the complacency there, but in European, I guess, voyages of old, and the last time they were there, it felt like an upset every time almost, or at least they were overcoming the odds. Tonight, they'll need to hold their nerve more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at some of the other ties tonight, Dundalk have absolutely landed on their feet here. And for Dundalk to be favourites at this stage of the competition is obviously very, very unlikely, but that's just the way it's kind of fallen this year. I think the Dundalk squad, they're a brilliant bunch of players. I think, you know, even if they went into that game tonight and they had a new management team put together at 2:00 today, I think the players would be able to come together and say, listen, we have a major opportunity here. We've come through a lot in Europe, and as has been pointed out, when they beat FH from Iceland in that amazing run in 2016, they weren't overly impressive. Now, FH were quite decent, but you can sort of stumble your way into into the situation they've gotten in tonight. In fairness to them against Sheriff as well last week, Eoin, they were 1-0 down, and mentally that's not a good place to be in a strange part of the world. 1-0 down away from home, having had a pretty bad campaign in many ways, and they came through. Their penalties were unbelievably polished for a team that, you know, could have mental frailty. So I think this is a strong body of players with a strong CV in terms of coming through, you know, tough ties in Europe. The only issue they have tonight is, you know, if should they fall 1-0 down, they're playing a team that's basically going to park the bus, and Dundalk will know they'll be vilified a bit if they don't get through, because it's a massive opportunity. I think Shane Keegan has played a key role. You could actually write, if you wrote a book on Dundalk this year, you definitely give a chapter to Shane. You know, he was let go by Galway United, who were relegated, maybe a bit unlucky, but his managerial career was all over the place, really. He went into he's doing other work. He took on a role as opposition analyst with Dundalk, which is a big enough role, but not that big in the overall scheme of things. Alan Reynolds has left, John Gill has left, Vinnie Perth has left, Shane is still there. And he's that kind of go-between, I'd imagine, between the Italian guys and the players, because they respect Shane and they know what he's about. And he would have played a massive role. And I think he'd be important tonight as well. He would have been important in Transnistria. And ultimately, I think the players have too much experience, too much quality, and too much mental fortitude to let tonight slip.
Are they going to do the business, Johnny?
Yeah, I think they will. Just purely from a selfish point of view from the players, a lot of them are out of contract as well. You know, I presume there are bonuses for them to get through. There are massive incentives even beyond football. They need, you know, a lot of them have families and kids, and they've lives to live. They really could do with the professional, you know, bonus of getting through to this. And I think they will, you know, really on form on. They should do it, but it is a potential banana skin. But I think if they go 1-0 up, which I expect that they will, I think they'll win comfortably.
And how are they going to fare in the group stages then if they get through?
Like that is a big question. On their form this season, it won't be pretty at all. I mean, they've problems up front as well. You know, Macmillan has come in and maybe hasn't been quite as sharp as understandably as he was when he was there before. He's 31 now, albeit scored a massive goal in Andorra. Patrick Hoban, at this level, it's tougher for him kind of because there's so much running, and his record in the league is really, really good. But you know, it's not as easy for him to get goals at this level. He'll play a big part tonight, but I think they don't really have many options up front other than that to bring in the group stages, like the likes of Kieran Kilduff that they had in 2016. Midfield is still a problem. Defensively, they haven't been as good this season, so I'd have major fears for them in Europe. But the one thing is, if they get there, they'll get confidence from that. And they still have like Patrick McElhenney, they've Duffy, they've Kolovich, they've Hoban, who will score goals in Europe. They have some very good defenders. You know, Gary Rogers has been a mainstay at this level. Sean Gannon, excellent. They still have the players there. You know, even their left back situation is very strong. It's just they've had such a turbulent year. You have to really outperform in Europe to compete at the group stage. And remember, in 2016, Dane Massey heads the ball against the crossbar and Tala against Zenit. If that goes in after 3 games, halfway through the group, they're going to top the group with Zenit Alkmaar and Maccabi Tel Aviv. If they get through, this is going to be a completely different story. But to be honest, it is kind of bonus territory given the year that they've had.
All right, that is Dundalk tonight. We'll check in, hopefully, if they're victorious tonight with Shane tomorrow morning on OTB AM. Johnny, we're going to keep you on the line because it is time for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training I was driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it?
We're We're going to move quickly through these this morning. Johnny, we'll start with Manchester United. The Sun saying Jadon Sancho believes he will be a Manchester United player before the window closes on Monday. The Mirror saying that Manchester United have opened talks with Barcelona about signing France forward Ousmane Dembele on loan. Now, should we assume that Manchester United are not trying to sign both, and which will get over the line in this window if not?
I presume they're probably not going to sign both. It's been a bizarrely quiet transfer period for United. There's been a lot of focus on these attacking players. Maybe they've issues elsewhere. I still think Sancho might just happen. It's been going on so long. I think they really, really want him. I would imagine the move appeals to him. So I'm going to take a punt and say that's going to be a deal.
Sancho a deal?
I think it's great. I think it may well be a deal, especially that story this morning. I'm not sure how much depth there is to it, but they just want him. They want him quite badly, I'd say. And as much as they were okay against Brighton, they do look like they need a bit of a lift. I'm going to take a tentative deal there.
Good stuff. Liverpool are set to accept a £23 million offer from Sheffield United for their 20-year-old English forward Ryan Brewster. The Reds also set to benefit from former midfielder Philippe Coutinho's Barcelona lifeline with a further £4.4 million due if the 28-year-old Brazilian makes another 14 appearances. Will Liverpool, Johnny, be using any of this money to spend further in this window? Is there anything they need? And also, will they have the title wrapped by Halloween?
I can't really see them not winning the league, to be honest, at the moment. Will they have it wrapped by Halloween? I wouldn't necessarily say that, but they shouldn't be losing many games. And what they did the other night against Arsenal without Thiago, I thought was, they were just so dominant. If Arsenal come to Anfield looking as subservient as that, what about everyone else? I think they probably will take the money. That it's a small bit of a gamble for Klopp, because I know he rates him, but Sheffield United desperately need a player to do something up front. So this will happen. I think this is a deal. On the balance, I don't think he's rushing Klopp to buy players necessarily with the money. But between the two things that you mentioned there, the guts of 30 million, not too bad considering they haven't exactly spent a lot anyway. So I think Klopp, looking at the game the other night with the role Jota played when he came in, probably should have given Salah a box for taking the ball off him, but just got on with it and scored a goal and gave him a kiss at the end of the game. I think they've very few holes in that team. I don't think they'll be bothering about spending the money if it comes in.
Yeah, what an addition. Literally shifting the heads off each other. What a transfer that has been in for Liverpool already.
Literally shifting the heads off. He's just a very likeable guy, Jota. He's just one of these impetuous, likeable characters. Klopp, he always does his character vetting, and he did it well here, I think. Manchester City have added Ruben Dias. Will they compete this year? Like, it's mad that we're even saying that, Johnny, but that is the question. Will they compete in a title race? They were favourites to win the league. I didn't really get that because I don't necessarily think they're any better than Liverpool. And to me, the Guardiola project did look like it was possibly wobbling a bit last year. Very disappointing towards the end of the season in the Champions League as well. Diaz is not going to win the league for them. They've more problems than that. Fernandinho, to be still playing him and someone reliant on him at his age. I'm just not sure Pep has the magic over them that he once had. I still fancy them to consider to cough up goals. Any team that concedes 5 goals at home that was favourites for the Premier League so early, major problems. I don't really see it, to be honest. Finally then, Arsenal have been boosted in their pursuit of 22-year-old French midfielder Hossam Aouar from Lyon, with the club's president Jean-Michel Aulas admitting they may lose 2 players before the deadline. What could he mean for Arsenal this season? Are they realistic top 4 candidates? And will anything less than that suffice? They were poor enough, I thought, against Liverpool, but they probably lacked a bit of belief. Midfield were very much outplayed. It's no surprise that they're trying to bring him in because they do definitely need to freshen that up. I think they are viable top 4 candidates. I struggle to be confident about basically a milieu of teams there. I think Everton could be the dark horse for the top 4, but the moment Spurs, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal bring in Leicester into the mix, necessarily be massive confidence behind any of them. But I think Arteta will do well. And they're probably solid enough, Arsenal. I think they are top 4 candidates, and I think that signing might well happen as well. Echoes of Arsene Wenger there signing a young Frenchman and all that. It's a good point, actually. He's a good young midfielder from a French club, though, is what I'll qualify that with. Right, okay, that's deal or no deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training on driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Johnny Ward there with us for the last 10-15 minutes or so. Enjoy the game tonight, Johnny. Shane Hannon, thanks a million for being with us this morning. We'll chat to you again on the headlines, I'm sure, tomorrow morning. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Coming up on OTB Sports Radio today from 1 o'clock, OTB Gold features the interview with Declan Murphy and his book Centaur. At 1:30, it's Golf Weekly Live. From 3 o'clock then, it's State of the Union with Keith Wood and Paul Vaughan, and a retro panel coming your way from 4 p.m. Keeping a Level Head with Stewie Byrne, Dion Fanning and Don MacDonald. And at 6 p.m, OTB Gold featuring Jerry Eisenberg talking about Muhammad Ali. If you don't have the OTB Sports app already, do yourself a favour. Search OTB Sports in the App Store. We're back on air and online from 7 o'clock tonight, and OTB AM is back at 7:30 tomorrow morning. We'll chat to you then. Bye-bye for now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.